And you guys will love this countdown. Here we go.
Let's do things differently this time. 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 You think you know the rest. You think you know the rest. You think you know the rest.
Amazing. So I had to show off for you guys that, starting off with the audio, I have never heard such perfect timbre matching between the TV and the quad system. This is exactly as it should be. My complaint in the past was that let me pull this up, was that there was no match between the HT-A9 and the A95K or the A95L. And actually, let's get you guys going. Okay, let's run that while we're talking. So on top, obviously, is the Bravia 9, and right below that is the 3110. Okay, so, and I set my exposure to minimize the exposure as much as possible to capture the difference in brightness between the 3110 and the Bravia 9. So the Bravia 9 was calibrated, as is the 3110. That's why it looks a little bit, well, this is why everything looks a little dim, because if I exposed it correctly, when we get to the brighter scenes, it'll be overexposed and you can't tell the difference. Because I know a lot of you are saying, wait, I want to see how this matches up with 3110. And the only way to capture that is to capture the highlights first, and then we can talk about the lowlights later. And I haven't even fully tested it, but I at least wanted to match the 3110 to the Bravia 9 in terms of the brightness, the specular highlights, because this is essentially why the Bravia 9 was created, was to match the 3110. And we'll talk about some of the scenes that as far as movies are concerned, what I think the 3110 can demonstrate with the Bravia 9. Now, as far as the audio, so if you guys have noticed, on the Bravia 9, the level of bass accuracy matching the quad was just incredible. I do not have the subwoofer SW5 in the sample. I wanted to hear what it sounded like without any additional subwoofer power. So the SW5 is an additional subwoofer you can get, but I just have the quad. And I have to say, first of all, that quad can go with any TV. Having it there, creating a phantom channel, and you guys go back and listen, the dialogue phantom was absolutely spot on perfect. So I was 7 feet away from the TV and 7 feet away from each speaker to my right. In the back, it's about 6 feet away. It's a tiny bit closer, but of course your rooms will be different. I wanted to optimize for the room, and also a lot of the bass response is a reflection of my room as well, because I noticed when I did the video again in post, wait, why does the TV have such strong bass? I didn't remember the bass being that strong, and partly it's probably because of my room, giving it some bass reinforcement, but additionally, the quad's bass easily a match for the TV. But if you want more subwoofer power, definitely get the subwoofer RSW5 or SW5. Now, as far as the actual audio from the Bravia 9, without the quad, completely satisfying. The audio was loud enough, and when comparing it to the QM8 and the Hisense, the QM8's just loud, but it was just too hot, sibilant, a little bit of trouble. You have to take an equalizer to it. The Bravia 9, untouched, out of the box, spot on, right? No twiddling. It was just crazy how it matched up with the quad so well. Now, those of you getting the Bravia 9, what the quad will bring to the table is the surround, but the dialogue and the audio quality doesn't necessarily improve. And that's what I found was so amazing, is the quad with the Bravia 9, this time you can tell they were developed together. Now, the problem with acoustic surface like the A95L and the A95K, it's a completely different audio technology, right? You have this glass trying to become a speaker. It's not the same, and it wasn't a good match. So dialogue was more natural on the HTA9 and a bit too bright, sparkling, sibilant on the acoustic glass, but unless you compare it side by side or one after the other, you would notice that. This is not the case with the Bravia 9. Tweeters match perfectly with the Bravia, with the Theater Quad or the Theater Bar 9. I'll have to test the Theater Bar 9 at M-Wave, but the Theater Quad is like, wow. Okay, so that's just getting that audio out of the way. Let's say hello to everyone, good morning and all that good stuff. I guess good afternoon in the East Coast. And thank you so much, guys, for coming. And let's see, we'll jump in and ask questions, but I want to say hello to everyone. All right, so all the regulars are here. Getty, Seconds 84, thank you. And Jay, Tyler, a lot of new faces. Broken Wrench, hey, welcome back, guys. Fraser, the Bravia 9 party, who's got the glow stick. And please show QM8 versus B9. That's going to have to be a dedicated video, right? Today I'm showing the Bravia 9 right next to or right on top of the 3110. And then in future reviews, we're going to compare it next to the QM8 and the G4 and the 3110, because it's almost like if I did everything today, it would literally take hours and hours. So we're going to have a lot to see, both live and dedicated videos, because I know a lot of you don't have the patience to watch these 60-minute live streams, but it is definitely coming, my friends. Okay, and used to chat on Twitter, now X, had a question about TCL when they will go on sale. It's on sale now. I need to go to Best Buy and make my price adjustment, but the QM851G is I think $100, $150 off at Best Buy. So it went from $14.99 to $13.99, and it should be another $100 probably on Prime Day. So yes, it's a good time to look at that. And let me see. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. The Bravia 9 audio is spectacular. Volume is there, SPLs are there, fully balanced, out of the box, no tweaking necessary. I am just so impressed. Thank you. I thought so. That's why I had to share that, because we don't review the audio enough. And when I discovered, based on Netflix's research, over 85% of people watching Netflix, despite DTS and all that crazy stuff, Dolby Atmos, that might be on your streaming platform, they're all watching on TV audio. So good TV audio actually is an unsung hero in this case, for sure. And hey, Jennifer is here somewhere. There you go. Hey, Jennifer, this is all your content. So I'm definitely going to link to your content below. So if you guys haven't checked it out, all of the content we're going to see today is from the HDR Super channel. And this is what Jennifer does so well. So I have this playlist that's back to back to back, all of Jennifer's content, right? They are all graded with specular highlights and peak brightness at different window sizes, 4,000 nits. And I think there's a video in there that goes 4,000 to 10,000, which would completely clip the 3110. But we'll see how Bravia 9's tone mapping as well is tested. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for putting together all these videos for us. As TVs get brighter, you all are saying the same thing, right? When it was 8K, where's the 8K content? Well, no one made it. And even if they did, where would you watch it, right? YouTube? So in this case, HDR, 4,000 nit and above content, yes, YouTube. Jennifer's making it, and hopefully this gets other creators to make it as well. So thank you again, Jennifer, for sure. John asked, a 3110, what TV is that? Technically, it's not a TV, so we're introducing this comparison. The 3110 is Sony's reference monitor, the grading monitor that Hollywood will use to grade 4,000 nits natively in specular highlights, right? I'm going to have a dedicated video on the 3110, its strengths and limitations, because no monitor is perfect, including this one, but it does one thing really well. In the 10% window, over 4,000 nits. Well, mine specifically, we had it calibrated and it tested like 4,100 nits or something like that. Amazing. So the 3110 will give you up to 4,100 nits on a 10% window without any tone mapping. TVs that cannot show that level of brightness has to tone map, which means they bring the brightness down so you can see the details, but you'll see it slightly dimmer. And what we're doing here today, guys, is with the Bravia 9 next to 3110, you get to see how much brighter the 3110 may be in some parts of the scene and how much they match in some parts of the scene. Where the 3110 is slightly brighter, it's because the Bravia 9 can't even hit that brightness, because remember, the Bravia 9 technically isn't trying to do 4000 nits, but it gets closer to 4000 nits than any other TV without sacrificing specular detail and color. Because if you take a G4 and attempt to bring it to that level of brightness, you lose most of the color and you end up with a bright white, which is fine if your specular highlights is in the snow, right? This explosion that's a white explosion or lightning, that's fine because it's white. G4 will hit over 2000 nits or almost 2000 nits at that brightness. However, if there's even a little bit of color, then it won't be in the G4. They would have to tone map it down, and then suddenly you'll have that yellow, but it's not as bright as it could be. The Bravia 9 takes that brightness and color and pushes it to where the 3110 was graded at, hopefully matching it close, right? So as we go through all these different scenes, you'll see how closely matched the Bravia 9 is to the 3110. And so the 3110 essentially is the current most modern Sony reference monitor. It was released last November. It's now available to all the Hollywood studios, and this is what they're using to grade natively to 4000 nits. Now, you could do it without this monitor. You could use software and have it, I guess, you could speculate what it looks like, but you won't see it in real content because the monitor is not capable of showing that 4000 nit content. So this gives you that full boom, pop in the face. So hopefully that answers John's question and everybody else. All right, it's going down. And already a super chat. Thank you, Christian, for that super chat. Okay, don't hate me, FOMO. After I gushed about the Q90C, the B9 is the first TV I have been excited about in years. Should I swap the 85-inch 90C for the 85-inch B9? Absolutely. And I'll tell you why, right? It's not because it's more expensive or quote-unquote better. It's use case. And so let's talk about the use case. First, the 85-inch 90C, their focus is very specific. And this is all Samsung's, right? I love Samsung for what it is, which is their focus is to give you the best black bars with some of their priorities for certain things, which is their local dimming is very focused on the perfect black bars. The 85-inch B9, I need to have it next to the 900D, which again, the focus is the black bars, as well as the QM8. So you guys can see where the B9 is maybe slightly giving up the black bars, but in return, what are you getting with the shadow details? So the B9's shadow detail could be better, but then are the black bars too high for you? In full screen content, it's not noticeable. Now, in black bar content, that's the question for many of you, right? So you have to take it as a package. The B9 has two things that the Samsung does not have, specifically the 90C, not the 900D. So motion processing and color and image processing out of the box without having to go and have anything calibrated, right? Very great. The 90C though, filmmaker mode is also very great. The question is, in lower bitrate content, where do they stand? The B9 will definitely be superior because XR clear with low bitrate is a match. So sketchy cable or a low bitrate internet at some point, it happens to everyone, YouTube TV for sports. The B9 nails it consistently. 90C isn't terrible. However, I think the B9, its design objective is that bright 10% window. That's more common in modern content, whereas the 90C is an all-arounder. They're both good TVs, I want to remind you, but I think the B9, once you throw audio into the equation, 90C cannot compete. I've recommended that if you get a Samsung, even the flagship, you need to get some soundbar. It doesn't have to be an expensive soundbar, but just something, even an Amazon special for $199, because it's just not there. It's too anemic. So I'd say wait. Now the B9 did drop in price. So if you notice, it's now like $4,700. And we're going to bring Robert on shortly because I think he's got some deals he's putting together for us. But he will price match anyone out there, plus bundle a soundbar, quad, whatever, at a huge discount. And of course, he's going to pay the sales tax if you're outside of New York, plus shipping and all that good stuff. And so, Christian, I suggest you wait. And I know you won't be at M-Wave, but at M-Wave we'll have the Bravia 9 as well as their best home theater system, which would be the Theater Bar 9 with the surround system and the subwoofer. So you guys can see, oh wow, this is pretty impressive. or not. And we're going to have more comparisons there because we have 2-3 days to do a lot of comparisons with G4 and the other TVs that we'll have there. And we'll play with some of the content exposure later if we have time. FOMO, why not show the speakers of HT89? I know different because be different for us in our room, but to get a general how was your shitting? Yes, actually, let me do that real quick right now. Let me turn up the exposure so you can see it real quick. Okay. So as you can see, to the right is one of the one of the quads on the right and the other quads on the left. They are about 7.5 feet away from my camera. And then of course, behind the camera are similar quads and they're about 6 feet away. They're right there in front of the TV. The TV is about 7.5 feet away from the camera. So I think you guys can see that. All right, so let me pan it real quick so you guys can see. Right, that's one. And here we have the other. Hope you guys can see that. Turn up the exposure a bit more. There we go. There, that's the other one. There we go. Hopefully, you guys can see that now. And I'll have to play with exposure once we get to other scenes and so forth. But yes, so the new speakers are called the Quad. I had the HT89. Oh, so let's talk about dropouts and stuff. So speaking to Sony engineers, right? What they did with the quads is they added additional antennas so that if there is a dropout, they would seamlessly switch from one antenna, one transmitter to another. So they're constantly seeing which of the 2 or 3 or multiple antennas have the best connection. And they are monitoring that. So that way there's no dropout. The HT89 was the first generation, it was only one antenna. So if you got a dropout, that was it. Either the router's too close or you're too close to another Wi-Fi source and it really messed things up. HT89 specifically addressed that. So I was very impressed that they did that. That's the kind of upgrades that I like. And thank you for that question, Dennis. Are you going to play sound out of the quads? Lisa, did you see the countdown? I did. I could play the sounds out of the quads, but I have to make sure that the copyright on YouTube is not a match. And I would want to do it with the effects, because this is what's going to happen. If there are no surround and it's just straight up almost mono, the Bravia 9 and the quads will sound nearly identical. That's how good the Bravia 9 audio is. So that's why I had to choose that scene, the opening scene from Spider-Man, right? Amazing drums and the cymbals, and you could hear it. You're immersed in that when the quads are on. Now, when the quads are off, it collapses in front of you, but the quality, sound quality is still there, but then everything's in front of you. So what's gonna happen is if I play audio where most of the sound is in front of you, then, well, what happens? It's going to sound identical. You'd be like, wait, how come the quads sound just like the Bravia 9? What the quads allow you to do is bring up your volume a bit louder. So if you're in a larger room, you could get a little bit louder, but more importantly, the quads bring that immersive factor and playing with the different formats, right? The DTS version, the commercial just died. Oh, there we go. Let's get rid of that. The DTS or the Dolby or Sony's own immersive audio. I preferred Sony's 360 audio, so that's what you heard. And I played it on their core service, right? So yeah, I got the core. So one of the first things I got on the core was definitely Spider-Man, because that's such a good movie, right? So yep. But I will have more comparisons of the quad. Oh, and one thing is, if you don't have a Sony TV or your Sony TV is older and it doesn't do the center sync very well, just because the quad has a superior phantom channel than most TVs own audio, quad could be matched to any TV. And so I highly recommend the quads right now. Easily my favorite, I'd say plug and play immersive setup. Everything is through your phone app, which I really like. In the past, the HT89, you went through the on-screen display that's in the TV, right, the eARC. Here, you download the app on your iPhone, your Android, you work everything through the app. Your phone becomes the microphone to set up the calibration of your room correction, whatnot. It works really smoothly. Sony nailed it with this app. So right now the quads are highly recommended. Not necessarily needed on the Bravia 9 because the sound is good, but if you want that surround, that match is so good. And if you don't have the Sony, I still recommend the quad. It's a bit expensive, but you know, if you get it with the Bravia 9 as a bundle for sure, I know Robert's going to have a great deal. All right, let's hit some of the super chats. Buddy Love, thank you, my friend. Found out last weekend that my sister-in-law watched everything in Vivid. There's nothing wrong with that. She said that her LED TV doesn't get bright enough. Shocked. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me pause this because this is so bright. This is why I have to turn down the exposure. All right, let's try that again. Here we go. Wow, even then, my exposure is still not low enough. There we go. That's better. Okay. And so, as you guys can see, people like bright things, right? And we talk about the regular Joes, and oftentimes we laugh at the regular Joes, which I don't mean to. Let me move this to the side so you can get your chats more easily seen. A second here, my friends. Okay, I think that'll do it. And at the end of the day, it's all preference, right? There really is no wrong answer. It's your TV, do whatever you want with it, but if you want it bright, without a doubt, the Sony is doing a great job matching the 3110, and they're both getting so bright that I'm challenged to run my exposure as low. I mean, I need an ND filter for this. It's crazy, but it's just so good in terms of what it's doing. Now, no TV is perfect. So right now we're going to all the stuff it does well, and we'll talk about, well, what could it fix and what could it do better near the end, because Sony always wants to know what it could do better. I think the audio is nailed. We don't have to do anything more about the audio, right? But specular highlights, I think, could even be brighter, but we'll talk about that. Here we have Mark J. I have the U8K 75-inch. How much better is the Bravia 9, especially the black bars in a dark room and viewing angle? Because they are very bad on the U8K. So I'm going to have to specifically do a test on viewing angles of the Bravia 9. So I can't say, oh, the Bravia 9's off angle is amazing. On angle, skin tones, I mean, just image processing is better. So let's talk about image processing. The XR Clearer this year is one step up than last year, as they always improve year to year. The U8K's image processing, like most Hisense TVs, they do just enough to get a few things right. Their skin tones are actually pretty good. However, I felt like its image processing last year wasn't great. Motion had issues compared to the Sony. So you're getting a bit more, just even the X90L. So this is not unique to the Bravia 9. Last year's X90L actually did better than U8K in skin tones out of the box, as well as motion and image processing of low bitrate content. So this year, the Bravia 9 is that much better, and for sure it's brighter. The U8K wasn't intended to be a super bright TV. I mean, for its time, sure, it's bright, but it's a value TV. The Bravia 9 is no holds barred. They did everything they could. They threw the kitchen sink at it. They chose their compromises, as all TVs have to, and they said this is a flagship product. So for sure, if you went from the U8K to the Bravia 9, the ownership experience, just everything about it will be better. Now, the U8K had great audio, by the way. I really like the U8K's audio. However, the Bravia 9's audio is that much better. So I'm not saying a lot, but the Bravia 9 is that much more expensive. So when you're paying that much, you have options as well. I mean, the G4 for one, right? So you have to let me know what is your content preference, right? Because in some things, the G4 may be the TV for you. And thank you for that super chat, FPS Lobo. Does using the professional cinema or IMAX enhanced presets lower the peak brightness for specular highlights? Also, can you go through your settings? So does using professional, cinema, or IMAX? Okay, so professional is the most accurate out of the box. Now, I'll tell you what I have, but the reality is this is what I normally do. Professional mode, max brightness, um, dimming zone, what is it? The local dimming, I have it on max, but you might want to play with it depending on the content, because if it's full screen, you might want to toggle between max and medium, because on max, it will make it slightly more contrasty, which I kind of like. On medium, it gives you a little bit more shadow detail. And then as far as tone mapping, I always use gradation preferred because I don't like the way brightness kind of clips it. So we'll compare it in the settings. In specific content, you'll see the difference. I really use brightness preferred. Sports is about it, right? So standard mode, sports, brightness preferred. Okay, that makes sense. But for watching movies, gradation preferred, keep it there. And professional is the most accurate. Cinema is similarly accurate. I honestly don't know exactly what the differences are, but you have basically two movie modes that you can kind of go back and forth between. So you could set professional mode to darkroom watching, and then cinema mode, preserve some of those color tones that are accurate, but then maybe make it brightness preferred, add more contrast, add more vibe color, right? Give it a more fun version that's still somewhat accurate. So in certain content, you could switch to cinema and have a bit more of that punch. Whereas in certain content that is very much skin tones, facial features, shadow detail, you have professional. So that's what I normally do, is I kind of separate that. IMAX Enhanced preset. Normally, my understanding is IMAX Enhanced is audio. IMAX Enhanced as a video, either it's the one that's done with Disney Plus where they extend the height. That's one way of calling it IMAX Enhanced. On the U8, the U8N, and the TCL QM851G, IMAX Enhanced made it slightly brighter, but it was not done very well. On the U8N IMAX Enhanced, I lost some contrast with that brightness. So I'll see how well Sony does. I don't recommend it that much because I had to then play with tone mapping to fix it. So once everything was fixed, it was just slightly brighter. So it's something that you're going to have to consider. I felt like filmmaker mode on the U8N with dynamic tone mapping on was better than IMAX Enhanced with dynamic tone mapping on or off. So we'll see how Sony's implementation is. That'll take me some more time. But the presets are really content specific. But the one that will hit everything in light controlled room is just professional mode. And it's not necessarily the peak brightness that changes, but more of the APL. Maybe the whole scene is brighter. I feel IMAX Enhanced is maybe for a brighter room. That's what it feels like the theme is on the other TVs. And I'll have a dedicated video just for the settings. So that way you guys just look at the settings, you're done. 6 minutes, we're out of here. I don't want you to be digging through this video for settings. And that's going to take some time too. And thank you for that super chat, Tone Control. I will look for your question. Hey, Getty, Quad versus HDA9, on base without a sub. The Quad definitely feels like the base was there. I was very surprised. I thought I had the SW5 or SW3. So the Quad definitely upped their game in the way they did the room interaction with the base. Now, if you put the Quads closer to the wall, you might get some base reinforcement. Mine are about 4 feet away from the wall. I suspect if I place the two front closer to the wall, I might get a little bit more base reinforcement, but it depends on the size of your room as well. The larger your room, the less base you're going to hear. The smaller your room and against the wall, it'll be perfect, right? So it definitely depends on the size of your room. I say get it without SW5 because it's an option anyway. Listen to it. If you feel there's not enough bass, unfortunately, and I suggest Sony, hopefully they do this in their next iteration, give us the option to add multiple subwoofers, right? So we can stack the subwoofers and get even more low-end SPL. But if you need more bass, I suggest getting that if you do get the SW5, put it near field, specifically within a foot of where you're sitting. So if you're sitting on a couch, put it right behind you, right? Put it or underneath your seat if you have an empty space and just kind of lay it under, because that's how the bass will be most even and most impactful, especially with the size of the SW5 not being that large. If you put it on the side of your room, I don't know. I mean, it's a question mark. You're going to have dips and peaks and valleys. Are you sitting in a null? I mean, if you put it near field, you solve all of that. It's even, there's no nulls, right? But I found it satisfying without it, just the quads alone, right? Without the TV adding to the base. So I was pretty impressed. All right. Boy, these commercials, I tell you. And how are the black bars in a torture test darkroom on Bravia 9, especially compared to the U8K? The black bars shocked me on the U8K so bad. That was my complaint about the U8K. So I feel the Bravia 9's black bars are better than the U8K. The question is it better than the QM8 or the 900D? And let's talk about the black bars as well. I think we're at the point where the black bars are close to good enough. Like the U8N didn't have as good of a black bar as the QM8 or the 900D. However, when I took out the exposure, right, I wasn't pixel peeping, or in this case, black bar peeping. I just watched it normally. I did not notice the black bars on the U8N because it was kind of even, but many of you are sensitive to black bars if it's too lifted, but everyone has a certain tolerance, right? The U8N is where I draw the line for tolerance. If it's any more lifted than the U8N, I'd say, you know what, that's too much. But the QM8's black bars really are good, both this year and last year. The Bravia 9, I'm hoping it's somewhere between the U8N and the QM8. And of course, the best in its class this year is the 900D, most consistent across all content. So, and we're going to have a talk about that at some point, because I think the black bar torture test would have to be QM8 51G, 900D, then the Bravia 9 has a feel, okay, where am I in this space? Because their focus is on black bars, but what did they give up? The 900D gave up so much in specular highlights, easily the dimmest specular highlights of all my TVs here. And so, you know, it's a give and take. You're focused on the black bars. Well, step back, QM8 black bars aren't as good, but the specular highlights were phenomenal. So the QM8 was willing to give up a little bit of specular of that black bar to get those specular highlights. 900D was unwilling to give up any black bars, but the specular highlights really suffered. So I want to see where the Bravia 9 drew that line. It'll be very interesting. Hey, I am Blue and Blues am I. Thank you for the super chat. 2024 98-inch QM8 versus the 85-inch B9 at $5,000, or the 98-inch QM8 price by Black Friday. Okay, so the 98 inches from TCL last year did not move much, even by Black Friday. It was like maybe an extra $500 off. I cannot predict how TCL will push the 98 inch this year, but I'll tell you this, 85 to 98 inch is a different experience. The image quality of the B9, pixel for pixel, still will be better. However, the immersion of a 98-inch TV, it's an end-all be-all to me. I think the immersion is so good that you may give up a few of the things that the Bravia 9 has to get that immersion. Now, there are other things involved. Hey, how long is this TCL going to last? All that stuff. So either TV you get, definitely get an extended warranty. So if, for example, if you buy the Bravia 9 from Best Buy or from Robert, which I highly recommend, he will definitely give you that extra bump in terms of the credit you get when you get his TV. You can apply to an extended warranty and you're covered, right? But remember to get an extended warranty no matter what you get if you're paying over $2,000. I just don't have any faith that a modern TV, even a flagship, something's not going to go wrong after the first year. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's how I've seen it happen. Doesn't matter. OLED, LCD, there's no guarantees. I'm coming from a 55-inch A80L and would like to go to a 65-inch. Would you recommend a Bravia 8 or 9? It's going in my bedroom. So this is a good question, Lobo. 55 going to 65, so you get a size bump. Bravia 8 or Bravia 9. So if you're used to infinite contrast, I'd say stick with the Bravia 8. It's in your bedroom. You don't need that extra brightness. If anything, that's going to prevent you from falling asleep if you watch that kind of content before bed. The Bravia 8 is an excellent TV. It takes the A80L and it adds, you know, the next generation processor slightly, right? But it's so close. The real upgrade is the size. You're going 55 to 65. So the Bravia 8 is going to be, oh my gosh, I can tell the image quality is better. No, it's, oh my gosh, it's bigger. The Bravia 9 at the 65-inch, if you're watching content in the evening before you go to bed, You're going to put it in a mode where it looks just like the Bravia 8, but slightly worse because the Bravia 8 is an OLED with infinite contrast. That infinite contrast you will notice in a light-controlled room, which I assume your bedroom would be. Now, if it's in your bedroom and you only watch during the day, lights are on, it's always bright, then the Bravia 9 you can watch during the day and enjoy all the HDR impact. But definitely let me know your use case, because I'm thinking evening watching, most stuff that's streamed other than Jennifer Gala's content is going to be under 1,000 nits, and the Bravia 8 is phenomenal for that. All right. Oh, Pity Pal, 65-inch X93L. And this, shrink this just a bit. Versus Bravia 7 versus Bravia 9. Bright lit home office, so not OLED. Streaming mostly. If it's streaming mostly, bright lit home office, save money, get the 65-inch X93L. You don't, okay, so get the cheaper of the 93L or the Bravia 7. The Bravia 7 and 93L are very similar, except the Bravia 7 had XR clear. But if you're mostly streaming, I don't know if you'll even benefit from noticing the XR clear. You know, it's in your home office, you might be attentive. If the separation in price is a few, only like $200, get the Bravia 7 because you're going to have the next generation processing and all that good stuff. But the X93L, if it's on sale enough because it's last year's TV, get the cheaper TV, because I'm thinking you're just streaming mostly. I don't know if you're going to notice a huge difference on Netflix or Prime or whatever between the 93 and the Bravia 7 in a brightly lit room, right? So that's just something to think about. I'd say now the 9 might be overkill for what you're doing. I mean, it's nice, but you know, your volume will be down, home office, you're not blasting it, you're not, dialogue is fine on all 3 TVs. So this is a case where I'm like, you know, don't beat yourself up choosing the best TV for your home office unless that's what you want to do. Because the Bravia 9 is better, but again, I want you to have time to sit there and enjoy the Bravia 9. But if it's like, oh, it's in the background, oh, you look up, watch the news, watch some streaming, 93L is fine if it's a deal that's worthwhile. Otherwise, if it's the same price, get the 7. Do the B9, Bravia 9, up-firing beam tweeters get utilized with a center sync when paired with a quad, or do they get disabled and only the side firing work? I honestly don't know what the algorithm is telling the tweeters to do. So I could only guess, which is it's making your center channel a true center channel. So whatever Sony thinks that center channel is supposed to be, whether it adds to the effects channel of the quads, front, left, rear, and reinforcing the effects, I don't know, because now we're talking DSP, and it may be doing nothing other than just giving you clarity of that dialogue and then freeing up the other speakers, the quads, to do the surround effects. So that way, you know, you don't have so much energy, right? Maybe it's focusing on more subs, whatever that is. So every firmware is going to change as well. We're so early in the audio firmware of both the B9 and the quad. Maybe 8 months from now, it would be more sophisticated, more nuanced. So as far as the beam tweeters, center sync, I think the focus right now is making sure dialogue and timbre matching is perfected. Now, effects, bouncing off the ceilings. Honestly, I did not feel a lot of height, and my ceiling is 8 feet, like maybe a touch under 8 feet. And I had the front speakers on 36-inch stands, actually maybe even 42. And so it's pretty close to the ceiling. I don't know if the source, in this case Spider-Man, had a lot of top, but it was mostly bed layer, which is fine. Sounds amazing. I'm going to have to find content specifically that is top heavy, including Technodad's spatial audio toolkit, and to see if I can hear the ones above. But right now, I'm not too concerned about the top firing anything because it's just so dependent on your room. All right. And hey, thank you, Joe, for the super chat. I'm sure you have a question coming up. And Pity saying, maybe second gaming TV for kids. So a gaming TV is a whole different matter, because then you have to make sure, so right here, right? It's a gaming TV. I'm assuming it's not like, they're not serious gamers, right? Console gaming, any of these TVs are fine for console gaming. You plug it in, or PS5, it works. I mean, if you're in the Mountain Dew League competitive, latency, every millisecond counts. You might go OLED, but these TVs are fine for gaming, all three of them. So I think it's fine. They work, right? They're not like on top of all the specs, but I don't think you need it. Well, you're welcome, Robert. Thank you for covering Sony's new flagship Bravia 9 QD Mini LED TV and their flagship Bravia Theater Quad. Thank you for inviting me to be on the video with you. Yes, Robert, come on by when you're ready. And as far as Robert's concerned, so I got this from Robert, the Bravia 9 and the Quad. And he had the Bravia 9 calibrated because I was saying, look, if we're going to get this compared to the 3110, I want to see the Bravia 9 at its best so that people who pay good money and have it calibrated to see, oh, well, first of all, the complaint is, when calibrated, do you lose a lot of brightness? And also, does it look the same as the 130 or 110? And in this case, I thought it looked phenomenal. And I need to turn up the exposure here so that you guys can see some of the stars are missing in that one. So let me turn it up right now so you can see the differences. It's slightly less bright, but the stars actually are not missing. They're all there. Just a lot less bright than I expected. There we go. Okay, so you guys can see that the stars are there, just not as bright as below, right? Because they're controlling the black levels, so I can see already what Sony wants to do with this. Okay, let me see if you guys see that. Okay, so the stars are there, but if you saw in the previous scene when my exposure was down, that's why I keep it down, that's how much brighter the 3110 is. If the Bravia 9 was to be as bright in those specular highlights, what would happen? You're going to get clouding. And so this is what the software has decided to do, which is, okay, we'll dim everything evenly so you don't have missing stars. But on the flip side, by doing that, it won't be as bright as, actually I'll pause right there, as the 3110. So let me show you. So let me take the exposure down. Right? That's how bright the 3110 is. This is the specular highlights I'm talking about. And even that, okay. This is what Jennifer graded these stars to. You know what? Let me turn on the waveform. Now I'm curious to see how bright she made these stars. All right. They're not super bright, but they're bright enough that, yes, the Sony wanted it to be even, and it is definitely even. There's no clouding. But on the flip side, we see how bright the stars on the 3110 are. So I'll turn the exposure back up. Yeah, these stars are just sparkling. I'll just point it out right here. These two stars up here, right? Wow, they are bright. And the Sony does a good job of not making them disappear like some TVs, but they're definitely not there. Well, they're definitely there because this will be the right exposure that you'll see it in. So you don't think, oh my gosh, there's no stars. There is stars. I just have to artificially turn down the exposure so you guys can see it. I want to make sure it's... Okay, so is this what I see? See, this is what I see, right? The stars are all there. But that's how much brighter the 3110 is. When you see it in person, you're like, oh my gosh, that thing is just... And that's why you have a grading monitor, because if you want the stars to be a certain brightness, the TVs, to preserve the black levels, and so this is what the Sony is doing, is they want to make sure you have all the stars, but they have to be even, because in the past, something like this has a lot of clouding. So it's just something to think about. Wide angle and anti-reflection worth it. So you're going to have to be careful with the anti-reflection. On the B9, the anti-reflection, these ads just throw me off. There we go. On the B9, the anti-reflection is very similar to Samsung this year. There's that rainbow effect on the 65-inch. I don't know about the other sizes, but on the 65-inch, there's definitely a slight rainbow at certain angles, whether it's right behind you, directly at it. You have to bring it home and find out. Ambient, not a problem, but direct light, I saw slight rainbow, very similar to what Samsung has on their anti-glare. So that's just something that's very room specific. Some people don't notice it because they don't have windows in the wrong places or TVs in the wrong angle. But the wide angle, I will play with the 35, 40 degree off angle at a later video. And then, move my camera so you guys can see how it compares to the QM8, the 900D, and so forth. Because I know that the Bravia 9 does have wide angle improvements that they're supposed to use. And that could be a benefit for some of you. Actually, it's a good one. There we go. I'm waiting for it to get bright enough. Okay. So this is another great scene. I want to show this to you guys. So the two stars here and here, right? The pink one and the yellow one, it is super duper bright on the reference monitor. And this is why I got the reference monitor, is to see, wait a minute, how bright is this supposed to be? We're always guessing, right? And having the reference monitor, you know that as long as it's under 4,000 nits or under 3,000, right, whatever that luminance limit is for the panel, you're going to get that brightness. And let's see how close the Bravia 9 got to the reference monitor. Reference monitor is actually a bit brighter. Yep. So it slightly disappears in this exposure on the Bravia 9, but not on the reference. But again, I don't expect the Bravia 9 to be a reference because this is the weakness of all LCD TVs. All, right? There is no exception. If you're going to hit that level, if you're going to have an LCD TV, you simply cannot get this kind of brightness at a specular highlight. This is when people get an OLED, because the OLED will match it as long as it's within the OLED's luminance level, which in this case it is. So this is something to think about, is if you enjoy these kind of scenes, this is what OLED TVs are for, right? Even the C4 is going to be slightly brighter in that particular highlight, but that's the strength of OLED. So this is why we say there's no, oh wow, you can really see that star brightening and shining as they get closer and closer. And that's what we're talking about, is the brightness that no LCD TV can match, even the specular highlights. And I'm going to have the QM8 next to it so you guys can see the various compromises that each TV chooses, because I know the shadow detail on the Bravia 9 is just spot on with this. I'm actually going to pause right here. Turn the exposure so you can see how well matched that shadow detail is. I mean, look at the shadow detail, right? So what happens is, as you get away from that bright thing on the right, in order to have that brightness of that purple or that magenta on the top right, a lot of OLED, or not OLED, LCD TVs are going to crush some of that shadow detail. It's going to disappear. The Bravia 9 preserves all of that. And so you have to ask yourself, is this important to you when buying a TV? Do you want to see all of that? Because I know the U8N crushed much of this part right here. A lot of this was gone on the U8N, but the stars look, or the space looked black. So wow, it's great, it's all black. But what did you lose, right? You lost a lot of that cloud from the cosmos, right? Because that's in the reference monitor. It's supposed to be there, right? It's not an artifact. And so this is why people get the Sony. They know they have all of that detail, but what do they give up? That extra bit of brightness in that star. So, it's that give and take. And of course, I know you guys are responding, well, that's why I get a QD OLED or OLED G4. This is the strength of an OLED if you watch this kind of scene, and we have to show it for what it is. However, if this is not all the content you watch, then you might not benefit from those subtle differences. That's just something I wanted you guys to see. Offman says, the B9 should not be calibrated in my opinion. Out of the box is ideal for it. And no one's making you calibrate it either, right? So that's the beautiful thing. The B9 out of the box, I know, has pretty great, let me turn this back down, pretty great skin tones out of the box and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, it's your choice. All TVs, I'm not saying just the Bravia 9 now. It feels like this year, the QM851G, the Sony U8N, the Hisense U8N, Samsung 900D, the S95D, the S90D, in their most accurate mode, filmmaker or professional on the Sony or on the movie mode on the QM8, they look really good out of the box. I love that these makers have focused on really getting skin tones, giving you that one mode where everything looks natural. And that's what I've been waiting for. It happened this year. So you're pretty safe, I think, with these flagship models from all these brands if that's important to you. Okay. I want to turn down the exposure a bit because these scenes I'm constantly playing with exposure. But of course, calibrations cost, what, $400, $600 depending on where you are. It's not for everyone for sure. Where I am, B9 85 inch, G4 83 inch, same price at the moment. Use case. I have to say use case. And I'll just tell you what Brian told me. If he was gaming most of the time and not streaming as much, let's say 60% gaming, 40% whatever, he'd take the G4 because of its gaming prowess for his PC gaming setup. If he was mostly streaming, watching movies, and that's all he did, and gaming, okay, Xbox, Series X, PlayStation 5, B9 without a doubt. Because once you take everything into consideration, the audio, all of that, he felt the B9, he liked it the most for movie watching. The G4 is great too, but he just liked that extra pop and all the scenes that he watched on Netflix and everything. So if it was just streaming movies, B9. If gaming is important to you, which it is to him, and that's why he's torn, because like, oh, I know what I'm giving up, but I do want the G4's 144 hertz and all that stuff. So, this is a good problem to have, right? You have the budget, but if you were to ask your spouse, that's my test, she almost always says the Sony. That's her preference, right? So it really depends on where, it's on pause? I can't tell. It's like, okay, I think it's playing now. And thank you for your super chats, my friends. Getty asks, how is the motion on the B9? Well, it's as good as it's always been. So it didn't get worse. How about that? The B9's motion, I'm going to have to put it through a torture test. So that will come. I'll have a dedicated motion video comparing it to the 900D because I think right now the standard for motion resolution is the 900D because sports motion, low bit rate, 900D I thought was just a step better than the G4 in certain things, but I'll have the G4, the B9, and the 900D, and we'll see who the motion champ is. But that sports content is what the 900D specifically was designed to do. I mean, they even advertise it. Look, sports motion is better, right? So the B9 did not advertise that, but we'll have some hard movie content. We'll see how the B9 does. But so I'll say this, the A95L last year completely satisfied me for motion. No complaints, even the X90L, the Bravia 9 is not a step down from last year. It can only be better, and that's fine. I think we're done as far as movie motion is concerned. I don't think it's an issue anymore. It's the more difficult motion, low bit rate, YouTube TV, sports. That is where all TVs are going to have a challenge if they don't focus on it specifically, which we'll see. Thank you, Christian. Can you show the back design of the TV? Looks exactly like previous year's back designs. Nothing special, right? The back is just plain. There's nothing about it that would say, oh, it's a Master Series. It looks just like the X90L back design. Plastic, grid, nothing worth showing that would say, oh, wow, this is a Bravia 9. Most of the cost and the effort is going inside the TV. So yeah, the back is nothing to write home about. Certainly not a reason I would choose or not choose the TV. Oh, wow, that was a good scene. I think that's the kind of scene the Bravia 9 was designed to do. Oh, all right, Robert, let me double check. Hey, guys. Oh, hey, Robert. All right, let's get you in here. Robert, how are
Hello.
you? Let's check
All is
our.
great here, and you look
Hey,
fabulous.
Robert. Hey, I was praising your service of electronics, and
Okay.
okay. So before we do anything further, if you guys don't know, Robert Zone is the owner of Value Electronics, owner and founder, and he is the one that organized the first ever TV shootout, what, 30 years ago? We're going to have another TV shootout this year with all the greatest TVs coming at you on, is the date firm now? Can we show the date yet? Is it August?
August 3rd and 4th, Saturday and Sunday, August 3rd and 4th.
All right, so we're going to have more details for you later, but write down that date, August 3rd and 4th. And so Robert is the person I turn to when you have TVs that are flagship and you have a hard time finding anything available, right? If you call him, he'll give you an allocation. Then he has an idea when it's coming. He'll help you track all of that because with any other store, if it's not in stock, you'll never know when it's in stock and you're constantly waiting, lurking, right? You're hunting. It's like shooting big game. Oh, it's up. And then 2 seconds later, it's gone. So with Robert, you say, Robert, just when's the next allocation? Put me on the list. And then now you have an idea when it's coming. And I know people have been bothering you since last year. 77-inch A95L. When's it coming, Robert? What happened, right? So there are certain TVs that are very hard to get. Robert is the man to do it. And this 65-inch Bravia 9. So I know that if you order from Robert, one, he'll take care of the sales tax outside of New York. Two, he gives you 5% store credit. Is that still the same?
Actually, the prices just went down, and
Okay,
that
what are the
promotion,
prices now?
well, on the 65 inch, it's down to $29.99, and that's
Okay.
all delivered nationwide. And it's $34.99 for the 75 inch, and $47.99 for the 85 inch.
And you tell me that you will price match authorized deals. So if Best Buy has a certain price, will you price match?
Yes, of course. Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. And also, we have some exclusive bundle promotions on the perfectly matched audio soundbars from Sony, on
Hmm.
what you have, that beautiful
What's your best bundle right now?
well, it's going to change because you persuaded me to do more.
I always tell you to do more.
Yes, you do.
Uh,
But right now,
uh-huh.
we get an extra $100 right off the price, and also
Of
free shipping nationwide. And but
$100
that
off the price of what? Of the quad?
off of each and every sound bar that Sony has. You pick the one that matches
Oh.
your need, and you can
So
buy more
if
items. Like if you wanted to get a wall mount, you get a discount on that. If you want to get the Bravia camera, you get an extra 100 off on that. They have beautiful headphones. Hey, Dennis. Hi there.
and So let me just summarize for those who are wondering, because Robert's deals are just, if you stack them, they become huge. First, if you
Yeah.
buy a TV, you get a 5% store credit. You take the 5%, and he will price match. So you order a Bravia 9 from Robert, price match to the lowest authorized dealer out there. Then he will take 5% store credit and apply it to a quad, which also then receives an additional $100 off. And at the end, he will pay the sales tax if you're outside of New York and includes shipping. And so at the end of the day, it feels like you actually have the best deal in town. And this is why I get all my good stuff from Robert, including my Trinnov setup over there, the
Yes.
quad, the Sony, so and the G4,
Yes.
because he also is one of the first to get the allocations. That's another thing. Unless Best Buy has a allocation that they unwittingly released, much to the chagrin of many TV brands, like last year. That's when I jumped on Best Buy. Oh wow, it's out already! And Robert's like, how come I didn't know about it? But this year, it feels like Robert is getting everything before or at the same time as everyone else. So there's no race to get that TV first. But with Robert, though, you're going to get the deals, especially the bundled deals. And I highly recommend the Quad as an immersive edition, right? You might not want to get it now, add it later, because I know the sound on the Bravia 9 is great, but that immersion, man, so solid. What other deals do you have, Robert, besides the Bravia 9? What are your favorite TVs that you're throwing out there right now?
Well, I love the Bravia 9 in all screen sizes, but I'm actually a big fan of the new Bravia 8. It has LG's new panel that's
Hmm.
brighter. It has Sony's new second generation of the XR processor that's been very nicely enhanced with motion resolution enhancement, with upscaling enhancement for low bit rate and low resolution content, for contrast enhancement. They really upgraded the XR processor. That was the best processor even before they upgraded it. So now it's brighter and has better, they upgraded the built in audio as well. So those are my two favorite TVs from Sony right now. And they
Now,
are
Getty has a great question, right? Because some still want an OLED, and the A95L rolls into this year.
yes,
Will you bundle the quad with the
yes,
A95L with all?
yes,
So,
yes,
yes,
we are.
right? So, okay.
And we have a 10% store credit on the A95L. And we
Oh,
have the bundle promotions with the quad. There's one thing you need to be warned about if you're going to buy a 77 A95L and the quad theater. You'll never want to leave your house again.
so I have to put this up. The A95L gets a 10% store credit that you can apply to the quad or the
Yes,
Bar 9 system. And I highly recommend A95L plus the quad. And you can now take off the A95L audio because the quad audio, and you guys heard the comparison at the beginning, definitely good enough. And I could easily, well, what I want to do is take that quad and bring it to my other TVs because I like the audio on the Bravia 9. That quad could turn any TV into that same level of immersion. I'm very impressed. I didn't expect that. I thought the quad would kind of require a Bravia 9, but
yeah,
ultimately the Bravia 9 didn't add much, which on the one hand is great because that matching between the Bravia 9 and the quad, but then turning off the Bravia 9, it didn't get worse, it stayed the same. Like, wait, the quad, I don't need the Bravia 9 after all. And what the quad does is add immersion. So if you get the quad, you always have the immersion with any TV. While the Bravia 9 will receive the immersion, but without it, you still get amazing audio. So
yes,
this A95L plus 10% to the quad plus $100 off,
yes.
I love it. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it's
And
also very interesting, and you sort of touched on this before, but now that the 3110 is the mastering monitor that all the Hollywood studios and post production houses either have already or have on order and are getting, you're going to
mhm.
see content coming out that's going to be mastered at higher peak lumens than 1,000 nits. And you're going to see it at the same backlight master drive that they share on the Bravia 9, the new one that just came out, where
Yep.
they improved it by controlling each little tiny mini LED. They control the luminance level and the quantum dot color rendering. Exactly the same as the mastering monitor. And they have the same peak lumens capability. You're going to see movies coming out of Hollywood exactly the way they mastered them if you own a
Yeah.
Bravia 9 TV. And there's no other way to do that. So there's a
Right
few
now,
benefit as well.
yeah, and I was going to say, right now, my disappointment is the only one I found that gave me extended scenes was exactly what they used at the Sony demo showcase, which was Alpha.
Yes.
So Alpha, unfortunately, is not available on 4K Blu-ray disc, 4K UHD HDR right now. I think you either have to order it outside the region is one way, or Kaleidoscape. So for those of you fortunate who have Kaleidoscape like me, you can get 4K HDR on Kaleidoscape, and indeed, it is that full, almost 4,000 nits, like 3,900 nits or something like that. It was insanely awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, the splitter is messing up. Apple TV is scaring it. So the Alpha right now is the only one that I've found with extended, like we're talking 2 or 3 seconds of the sun rising, 4,000 nits, and it felt like they held it just
Yeah.
enough before the TVs collapse and they start dimming down. And because it's just a lot of power, and you see the sun moving across. So it's in the opening scenes of Alpha, and I'm going to show it for you guys, right? I'm going to isolate those scenes so you guys can see. You guys seen some of it, but that's like one of 4 bright scenes that has color, brightness. So even if a TV tries to attempt that brightness, it's going to lose some color. And this is why Sony was showing off with that scene. And I'm
Yes.
hoping that scene, although a 2018 movie, I'm hoping other producers and color graders see that and go, oh, I can do that now. These TVs can handle it. Whereas in the past, like, why am I wasting my time? A TV cannot handle that. Oh, there we go. Let me turn up the exposure on this. But yes, oh, so we have a super chat from Caves I want to hit, Robert. And he has a Sony A90J, 65-inch, looking to upgrade with another Sony. Should I wait for a brighter Master Series Sony, so maybe a Bravia 9.5, or consider the A95L? Is the Bravia 9 equivalent to the A95L? How is the Bravia 9 sound, I guess the Theater Bar 9 sound bar? Is there a
Yes.
bundle if I get both? So A95L plus the Theater Bar 9. So let me answer the Bar 9 part, and you can answer about the bundle. The Bar 9 Theater Bar alone is not satisfying. It's loud, but you need to include the RS rear satellites plus the SW5. So it ends up being a 3-piece system, the Bar 9 plus by the satellites, sides, rear surrounds, plus the SW5. Now you have a complete bundle. Now the SW5 you may not want to add yet. You want to save some money. Get the Bar 9 and the rear surrounds. And if you
Yes.
feel that's enough, don't get the SW5. You want more subwoofer, get the SW5. But the quad is already a surround system. So just something to think about. Now, but to you, Robert, do you feel that the Bravia 9 is equivalent to the A95L? Because I asked you because I know they're both your babies. So what would you choose in this case? And I'm going to adjust exposure.
I think for your use case, you should consider the A95L because you have a somewhat similar older generation Master Series A90J OLED, which is what I actually still have myself. So I think the A95L, it's a quantum dot OLED, so it's an upgrade from the A90J. It's still the current model. It is a Master Series. You'll get 2 years free of Bravia Core programming. And by the way, on the Bravia 9, they just upgraded it for 2 years free of Bravia Core programming with the purchase of the Bravia 9. Sony Bravia Core programming for 2 years, which is Sony Pictures and Columbia Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Movies at 80 megabits per second. They don't compress it. So you get Blu-ray picture and audio quality streamed to your house.
That's what I've been addicted to right now, is watching the core version of the movies, Bravia Core, with the quad, because I wanted to test it in Sony's native setup, and it's just amazing. Hey,
Yes.
Mwolde, thank you for your super sticker of a pair jumping up and down, #1 fan. And as always, we are your #1 fans. So
Yes.
let's see. Yeah, I'm so glad everyone showed up for this.
And by the way, there is that bundle promotion that's exclusive to our company. To the last person, I didn't finish mentioning that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and that's another thing is, so Robert is a diamond dealer, right? Is that what you guys call it?
Yes,
And
correct.
as a diamond dealer, they kind of rank you among the different dealers. So you get special promotions that may not be available to other dealers, which gives you the chance to offer these amazing bundles to them. And here's a person with an A90J and moving to an 85-inch Bravia 9, right? So I love that. Oh, this
Very
is a
nice.
great one. This is a great scene. I'm going to turn down exposure a bit because
That's
it's such a good
beautiful.
one, isn't it?
They look so much like each other. The
Oh,
Bravia 9 looks a tiny bit brighter. Does it seem that way in person?
so that's another thing is in the slightly larger windows, the Bravia 9 arguably could get brighter because
Yeah,
the limit of the 3110, I was going to share this on a 3110 video, is at 50%, it cannot exceed 1500 nits. It will clip because it doesn't
right.
tone map. So you lose detail above 1500 nits. And on some of Jennifer's content, I'm like, where did the detail go? It was all clipped out because it hit the limit of the 3110. So nothing is perfect. And so I said to myself, wow, even my reference monitor needs to get brighter. And so there is definitely space for these things to get better. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, the creator can find a way to just push beyond even the reference monitor's capability. In this
yeah.
case, if it's 1600 nits at a 50% window, couldn't keep up. So
And
that's just something that I love seeing.
FOMO, have you tried to evaluate it for blooming, haloing,
So it
and
has to be relative to the QM8 and the 900D. Because of it, and I'll have the G4 as a reference next to it. The 3110 is so small that if I shot a video with it, it's too hard to capture the differences. And as we
right?
know, OLED, the G4, is infinite contrast. So any representations of blooming black bars is 100% reference on the G4 because that's what they do. That's what OLEDs do. And then we can see the other TVs ranked against it. So that way I don't need to use the 3110 for that. But a lot of people are not buying the Bravia 9 because of the whole blooming issue. Otherwise, get the
Yeah.
G4, get the A95L, call it a day. But yeah, go ahead, Robert.
I just wanted to mention the reason that OLEDs are infinite contrast is because they render pure black. And when you divide zero, pure black, into any luminance level, it's infinite. But the perception of contrast, what we see, appears to me to look like the contrast is higher on a Bravia 9. It's
Hmm.
near OLED black, but it actually is slightly lifted blacks, very slightly. So we can measure the contrast, and there's a real number we can give you. There is no contrast that we can give you a real. So that's why it's infinite, because it's not
So
measurable.
exactly. I want to address SD's comment because it's so nuanced. If any portion of the screen is brighter on the Bravia 9 than the reference monitor, that means the Bravia 9 is not using accurate settings. So SD, in the past, if I told you that content's limited to 2000 nits, you're absolutely right. Because, it shouldn't be brighter than what the reference monitor can handle, and it could easily handle 2000 nits. However, Jennifer, and this is why I'm using Jennifer's content, she specifically graded it beyond the ability of the 3110. The 3110 has a brightness limit, not a limiter, it's just designed to hit a certain brightness. So for example, at 50% window, right, any kind of brightness that's that large of a window, it is hard limited at 1550 nits. So if it's 1600 nits, it still only shows 1550 nits. So if it's a 50% window, so if Jennifer creates content and she made a 50% window 2000 nits, the reference monitor cannot show 2000 nits at a 50% window. It'd still be just clipped white, and that white is only 1500 or 1550 nits. However, and I'm not saying the Bravia 9 is capable of this, mind you, but let's say a Bravia 10 or a TV or possibly next year or year after that's capable of 1700 nits at 50% window, will be brighter than the reference monitor and will show all that detail without tone mapping, because content between what the reference monitor is capable of and what this new TV is capable of in that window, the reference monitor, that 4000 nit is only good up to or at around 10%. And as your windows get larger, that 4000 nit starts to drop off, right? So mine specifically at a 10% window is like 4100, just over 4100 nits, which is still phenomenal. But so now at 10%, I don't think the Bravia 9 can handle 4000 nits. So yeah, it's not going to be brighter, even if it wanted to be. But it definitely is content specific, and this is why I have the reference monitor. It will show like 3000 nits, but then I'm like, wait, but why is there no detail? At least the waveform is accurate. It's telling me, I'm sorry, man, I gave up the ghost at 1500 nits, but there's 2000 nits here ready for you. I just can't show it. Find another monitor, right? So the waveform will show it, but the monitor cannot. So SD definitely is content specific. And in most movies, you're absolutely right. The color graders do not want to exceed the capability of most consumer TVs, because then you just get complaints. Oh, I can't see anything. But the reality is, and this is why Jennifer is so great, she specifically does this to break my reference monitor and break my TV so I can say, I need better, because that's her job, right? Is when we push the limits of what these TVs are capable, one, the TV makers, it's always playing catch up, but two, the creators have more tools to play with 5 years from now. Because if the creators know, movie makers, Hollywood knows that most people have TVs capable of this, like, oh, wait, okay, all right, we're up to the challenge, right? And that's why they remaster movies. They take movies made in the 70s, give it Dolby Vision, add the specular highlights, give it dynamic range. I mean, it's no longer the original creator's intent, but the new creator, right, came back and says, you know what? When I directed this 8 years ago, I didn't think of HDR. I'm back. I'm going to remaster it myself. I'm still the creator. I know a lot of people are complaining about what James Cameron did, but hey, he's the creator, right? At the end of the day, yes, SD, to a certain degree, it may not be accurate, but depends on the content. At that point, yeah, it could be accurate. So, but excellent comment. Hey, Doug. Doug asks, the 3110 does have a small amount of halo and blooming. It wasn't designed to be an OLED. Thanks for the video, FOMO. As always, Robert, a real pleasure when you share your knowledge. Yes, this is why it's so hard to get Robert. He's such a popular guy. So I'm like, okay, when is he free? And most importantly, a lot of you are consumers. So I bring him on with his great deals that, hey, if you want any of the stuff that he carries, G4, A95L, and a combination bundle that you want him to put together for you, this is the time to ask. And let's see here. Brian Means asks, new build light controlled media room. Okay, so he's new construction, light controlled media room, 18 feet by 18 feet. So it's a square sitting 9 to 12 feet from the screen, mostly streaming, YouTube TV, movies, sports, PS5, 1 to 2 PS5s, playing per year. Would you go 85-inch B9 or 98-inch X90L? Man, that 98-inch X90L. So you're 9 feet away. The immersion from the 98-inch, it's really nice. And it's light controlled. So I'm so tempted by the 98-inch X90L. Okay, while I think about this, Robert, because I know you get this question, you want to answer it? Because I'm going to have to think this through. What are your thoughts for Brian?
I'm a huge fan of the Bravia 9 85-inch, but in your use case, I would take the 98-inch X90L. I would indeed. And you have a light-controlled room. You don't need that high peak lumens, and you'll enjoy that immersive experience. The 98-inch X90L. And please get a call on that one. I have something special to tell you.
And to your point, Robert, that's exactly what I ordered from you, is a 98-inch X90L in a brighter room, actually. It's my friend's house overlooking the beach, and that was a 98-inch X90L. This is before the Bravia 9, but even if the Bravia 9 was available, they sit, I'd say 10, 11 feet away. And the 85-inch, honestly, would be too small. I mean, it might be brighter, but I felt that their immersion would be better served because they're not like us, right? When I say like us, oh, look, shadow detail, specular highlights. They just want a good TV. And they want it easy, trouble-free. And I thought the X90L was a good fit. But then the size is something that is so unique. 98-inch Sony. So with that theme in mind, I too would agree. 98-inch X90L. I think that would be
The only,
great, Brian.
for Brian, the only other thing to consider is actually building a theater, because then you'll have a cinema experience and you can get a Sony projector.
Yeah.
That would be a nice application for a light controlled room like yours, and get a 120 inch.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I think someone earlier asked about what other TVs are in the $2,500 range. Yeah, for some reason, I can't find that question. So I'll just answer it right now. So the Bravia 9 right now is in that $2,500 range at the 65-inch, right? Right, Robert? Yeah, $2,999. So say between $2,500 and $3,000. The only other two TVs in that range that would be flagship level, meaning it's polished. It is the best TV from that maker, is the S95D, Samsung
Yeah.
S95D with their infamous anti-glare. You either love it or you don't. The G4, which I think is definitely a solid TV, my favorite TV of 2024, is the G4 65-inch, also around above 2,500, right, Robert? Like 65-inch, something like that.
Yeah.
So those are your three flagship TVs from Samsung, Sony, and LG. And depending on your use case, one of them is for you as far as that extra, if we're splitting hairs, then that split hair is where you would go with your use cases. All three TVs will look phenomenal. So if you don't plan to get a soundbar and you need to fill your room a little bit with audio, you have to get the Bravia 9 because of the three, the Bravia 9 has the best audio. Second to that is the G4. Now you're sitting a little bit closer. G4 audio is actually pretty solid. Not as good as Bravia 9, but
Right.
good as far as OLED TVs. Easily probably the best audio among OLED TVs this year. And then the S95D, safe to say it's probably the worst audio of any OLED TV. It's just, you got to have a soundbar with the S95D. So that's one consideration. But on the other side is gaming, right? S95D consistently is plug and play, bright gaming. Forget it. You don't worry about it. It looks great all the time, right? So if gaming is your priority, a lot of people choose that. But then if anti-glare bothers you because you have a lighting condition where on the S95D, wait, I see this kind of glow because I have this bright light. S95D is not for you. You might prefer the G4's anti-glare. But average person that walks in and looks at all three TVs, they're like, ooh, they all look great. So at that price point, those are the three TVs to choose from.
Yes. And by the way, the G4 and a 65 inch is on sale for $32.99, and the Bravia 9 is on sale for $29.99.
Okay. So then, and I think the S95D is around the price as well, right? Just above 3,000. At 2,500 65-inch, then all you have is the Bravia 7, which is at 2,000, right? Bravia 7
That's right.
around there.
Yeah.
And then maybe the Bravia 8 is above 2,500 around there. But
It is
I'd say wait,
25.
yeah, wait till Black Friday. If you have a hard cap at 2,500, you might want to wait till Black Friday and see where everything is. And the A95L, in my opinion, is still a great TV at 65 inches, Robert. What are you selling the A95L for right now at 65 inch, if you remember?
Let's see. I'll tell you that in 1 second. That is in 65 inch, $34.99 plus our exclusive store credit and free shipping.
All right. And Tristan says, hey, compare the Bravia 9 to the QM8. That is its own video because there's just so much to do for that one. That one will be coming and you will see what is the core strength of QM8 and what does Bravia 9 elevate. And most importantly, if those things that elevates is not important to you, maybe the QM8 is the TV for you because it's a completely different class of TVs, right? It's kind of like a hardcore Mustang. You get the 0 to 60, and then you're paying twice as much for a Porsche GTS. And you're like, wait, well, what are you doing with the Porsche GTS that you're not doing with the Mustang? Mustang might be for you. So if it's just 0 to 60 at Cars and Coffee, Mustang all the way, right? Now, Aquania asks, $2,500, 85-inch, QM8, or the $2,500 65-inch. We're talking size aqua, and as you know, I love larger size TVs. So assuming that your use case is not something that exposes the QM8, and its biggest weakness really is it crushes shutter detail a little bit, and you're going to have to play with those settings depending on your content, but it is a good value. But the audio on that, be careful, it gets hot. You're going to have to play with the equalizer on it, but come on. At 85 inches, 2,500, it's an 85-inch TV. And how far are you sitting? If you're sitting 8 feet away, 7 feet away, that's going to be super immersive, right? So it's really hard to compare because the Bravia 9, although it's the same price, that's a lot of quality for a smaller TV. And for me, it's always about immersion. Oh, Robert, is the X95L already sold out? Do you have it? Maybe Getty G is looking for an X95L.
No, we have them. They're in stock.
All right. Oh, I may have missed a super chat here. Thank you for reminding me. Oh, I missed a couple. Boy, you guys are on it. Okay. Thank you, David. I apologize. Make the call, 77-inch A95L or 85-inch B9. No gaming. Light-controlled room, standard TV and streaming. No DVD. No wishy-washy answer. Spend my money. Oh, 77-inch A95L. I love that TV. I have it. It consistently does everything well. No complaints. Out of the box, rock solid. But you need to add a soundbar. So take that 10%, get a quad, now you're done. Because the 85-inch B9 without a soundbar is all you need. The 895L, I would like you to get a soundbar with that. But if we're not talking sound at all, the 895L, the image quality at 77 inches, it's rock solid for me because I'm so used to OLED. Now, David, if you've never had an OLED TV before, get the 85-inch B9. You'll be very happy. If you have an OLED before, you're watching an OLED right now, then you have to get the A95L. So that's my only hedge. I'm not being wishy-washy. If you've never had an OLED before, get an 85-inch B9, and I think you'll be very happy. For me, though, because I live and breathe OLEDs, it has to be the A95L. Robert, do you decide anything differently?
No, you said it perfectly. And just a quick recommendation. There's over 350 people watching. Please, everybody, please click the like button. I know that you must be loving this video. So please do the
thank you.
And click the like button. So let's have everybody do that now, please.
And I know there's another super chat. I just want to make sure I got everyone. If I missed your super chat, please let me know because I don't mean to. Sometimes things are moving so fast that I'm like, oh, okay. Hey, WH, thank you for that super chat. Light controlled room, B9 75-inch or A95L 77-inch. Also, isn't it always option to turn down brightness on the B9 in a dark room? Two-part question. I love it. Same size, I'd go with the A95L all the time because it's a light-controlled room. I love the infinite contrast with the specular highlights. I am a fiend for specular highlights. I need those little 1% windows or less to be accurately bright. Now, isn't there an option to turn on the brightness on the B9 in a dark room? The answer is absolutely yes. So in a dark room, you could turn down the brightness, but there's accuracy, right? So we're not saying the B9 is inaccurately bright, right? If the content asks for 2,000 nits, in a certain window or whatever, the B9 will hit that demand accurately more than the A95L. A95L will still give you a great looking image, it just won't be as bright because accurately, that's what the content asks of you. If you take the B9 brightness down, it's no longer accurate. But the good news is there is rarely any content that will ask the B9 to be bright. So the B9 is accurately bright. It's not brighter. So I think this is something that people are so confused about. We're not saying the Bravia 9 is brighter than the next TV. If the content is not supposed to be bright, let's say 100 nit SDR, it's not going to be brighter than 100 nits. I mean, you can make it brighter, but you're not supposed to, right? And same with the A95L. As a matter of fact, if you're watching Alita, right, great 4K movie, its HDR is no brighter than 600 nits. Both TVs look identical. The Bravia 9 does not make a leader brighter, and it shouldn't. Now, if you have a movie like Alpha, and so I use that movie as an example, Alpha has scenes where you need to be closer to 4,000 nits on a 10% window. Well, the Bravia 9 will get closer to that 4,000 nit 10% window than the A95L. So turning on the brightness, you just turn down the creator's intent, right? So I don't think you want to do that. So the question is, in a light-controlled room, why you want that is you can then enjoy the infinite contrast of the A95L. Whereas in a bright room, that infinite contrast is somewhat neutered because now all the ambient light, your eyes are no longer adjusting to the darkness. Your eyes are adjusting to the brightness, which means it's less sensitive to shadow detail, which means everything looks crushed, which means the Bravia 9 looks very much like the 77-inch A95L. So in a light-controlled room, I almost always recommend the same size OLED as long as it's a top-end QD OLED or the G4, because they could hit those brightness that match the B9 more often than not. Right now, there's less than a handful of movies that the B9 can do accurately brighter than the A95L, just a handful. And if that's not a big deal to you, that's why I would say get the A95L 77-inch in a light-controlled room. So don't forget the option to turn on the brightness on the B9, because if it's accurate, you wouldn't want to do that. Now, sports is another matter. If you want super bright sports in a bright room, there's no accuracy there. And you take the B9 to its very limit, yes, the A75L cannot keep up. But in a dark room, you don't need to do that. A75L is more than bright enough for sports. So thank you for that super chat. Do you have anything to add, Robert? Because I know you get these questions all the time. So I'm acting like your product rep right now for Sony. Yeah. I tell Sony all the time, Sony,
Very accurately and very nicely. Thank you.
All right. Hey, Brooklyn Blaze, another regular. Thank you for that super chat. 75-inch B9 or 83-inch B8 for a light-controlled basement. So the 83-inch Bravia 8 would be the 83-inch A80L, right? There is no Bravia 8, right? So it's really between the 75-inch B9 or the 83-inch A80L, Brooklyn. Light-controlled basement, $1,000 price difference. 30% sports, 40% streaming, 30% gaming. I've spoken to Brian at length about his gaming experience. He found the Bravia 9 gaming quite satisfying.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't do 144 hertz. Again, if that's important to you, I have to bring that out. But then neither does the A80L or the B8. So that is a wash regardless. But it's larger. So in this case, I would go with a larger 83-inch A80L. I think light-controlled room, all of that, you're going to enjoy the larger size. I think here's the great thing about larger size. It doesn't matter what the content is, you benefit from the larger size, period. Whereas with brightness and the specular highlights, you got to choose this. You got to watch Jennifer Gala. As much as I love you, Jennifer, a lot of people are like, I'm sick of YouTube content. But if it's larger, it doesn't matter what you watch. Gaming, SDR, Seinfeld, it's all going to be 98-inch or 85 inches. So in this case, go with the larger 83-inch B8 because more often than not, or A80L, more often than not, you're going to appreciate the immersion in every single content, even a 70s Columbo, as Brian likes to enjoy. But the B9 is really, if you have the same size, you're not getting any larger and you're moving to a B9 because you want that HDR impact, yes, the Bravia 9 will give you HDR impact for the content like Alpha and the future content that's going to come out on Amazon Prime, so forth, right? That's using this new grading monitor. You're kind of like preparing for that HDR impact that few TVs can match. So, but in your case, I take the 83-inch A80L. So there's not going to be a Bravia 8 at 83 inches at all, right, Robert? Just want to make sure.
No,
okay.
And the other thing about the 83 A80L and only the 83-inch, it has the heat sink on it that the smaller screen sizes don't have, which means it cools the panel and they can drive it harder and make it brighter. It also has an upgraded audio system and an upgraded chassis and frame. So the 83 A80L is serious, excellent choice.
Mm-hmm. So Othman has a good comment. All people prefer A95L because QD OLED over the G4 because of the colors. I think the Bravia 9 is even worse than WOLED. So I don't know. I think it's content dependent. We'll see. I definitely need to compare that because for sure at 100 nits, the G4 could do it all, right? But we're talking at, let's say, 800 nits. Not, it doesn't have to be super bright. At 800 nits, can the G4 maintain that color luminance as well as the Bravia 9? So it'll be content specific, Othman. I'm going to use movies for that as well as Jennifer's content. So you can see, I don't know the answer. We'll see. But that's something that we have to explore, right? So, we'll see. But we can't assume either way.
That's
I've been
right.
surprised before.
And the Bravia 9 has excellent color saturation and color volume.
Yes. I'm seeing that with Jennifer's content right now.
Yes.
FOMO, thoughts on the new MediaTek Pentonic 800? Lots of major improvements. What can we expect from future TVs with this new SoC? Hopefully 2025. Oh, I'm so excited to talk about this, Dan. Okay, so forget the 165 hertz gaming, right? No one's going to benefit from that except the few PC gamers who ultimately, I don't think they're going to buy these TVs just because of that. What's amazing is the reason why it's at 165 hertz refresh is because the processing power is that much faster. So with faster processing power, more processing units within the Pentonic, suddenly they're giving Sony, and I'm going to single out Sony because Sony really wants to focus on its image processing. They're giving Sony's image processing the hardware to elevate that processing, right? They could add more neural networks. They could do a lot more with that processing. Basically, Samsung makes their own chips. And we know Samsung has their own foundries, all that stuff. They design their own chips. So their TVs and LGs are very much cutting edge when it comes to processing, whereas Sony and many other brands, well, every other brand, has to wait for MediaTek and work with them and then take that and apply it to what they're doing. So if MediaTek can give them that processing horsepower, then suddenly the Sony can then be like, oh, you want motion processing? You want this additional sports resolution? We can do it now. So that's why it excites me, is that additional processing power. And they've already mentioned what they're processing, right? Image processing specifically, motion processing. And when I heard that, I'm like, okay, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, I'm going to have to pause this scene because there's color and brightness in this scene that I wanted to show off. This is a super bright scene, by the way. It's the perfect size window for this.
Perfect. That will be your slot. Very nice.
Okay. And the question is whether, and this one is 4,000 nits, and it's hitting the limits of the 3110's ability to resolve. I think it is 10% window. Okay, so the 3110 is slightly brighter, and this is why we're saying that the Bravia 9, it's not supposed to hit 4,000 nits, but it gets closer than any other TV. And this is the scene I'm going to compare to the QM8, the G4, the S95D, right? These are all bright TVs. Who can get closest to the 3110 in this scene? Because that little segment on that right, 4,000 nits, and it has a little bit of color in there. So how much color do you lose getting there, right? And I have to say, there is a little bit of color preserved in the Bravia 9 at a slightly dimmer luminance than on the 3110, because it's possible the 3110 might be clipping some of that color out. But in this case, I think it's just too bright.
Yeah. 800, not
Right there. This is the one.
Yes,
There we
that
go.
one's
Okay. So as that scene resolves, we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that I would sell you, but I don't think we can so that one. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
So there's definitely subtle color here on the reference monitor. Let me turn this off. Take a waveform. Right? There's a lot of color here, but it's so bright that my camera cannot even capture it. But you're going to see some of that color here as well. And this is where we separate the best TVs.
Meeting I can't. Sorry. Thank you.
So this is where we separate the best TVs from, maybe the mid-tier, is how much of that color is preserved while also hitting that brightness. And so that's what I wanted to show, and that's why I love Jennifer's content. It's so nuanced for something like this. Yeah. So I just had to show that off and give Jennifer her due, because of stuff like that I just love. Okay. And Getty asks, X95L versus B9 85-inch. Getty, depends on your content. If your content doesn't push the X95L, get the X95L 85-inch, right? If your content pushes it, then the Bravia 9 will match the challenge. Oh, let me pause this. This is really good content. I'm going to turn up the exposure. There we go. Oh, look at that color. It's very interesting. This is the color saturation, the color luminance that someone asked earlier. Is WOLED has, well, this year's WOLED G4, very saturated colors, right? Accurately saturated. Let's see how it does in that scene with the daisies. I'll rewind it real quick, because this yellow saturation, I've been watching this over and over with different content, and it's just wow. So this is a great one to compare color saturation, specifically yellows and reds, right? But still, right, it's just something that pops for sure. Oh, this is another bright content. Is this whole series of clouds is just crazy bright, especially when we get to the girl. There's a lady dancing, and that's the one that hits 4,000 nits in the smaller specular highlights.
Beautiful.
And right there, oh, this is so bright, those clouds up there. And she's going to come back again. Okay, so you guys can see the details in those clouds because it's so bright. And oh, and this one as well. Oh, this is a great one. Okay, I'll have to pause right here. This is where the 3110 could not get bright enough to resolve that brightness. So on the Bravia 9, you see that detail? I'm just going to show this off. This is so crazy. So right here, right? There's a lot of detail here. On the 3110, this clipped. So this is one where I said, wait, why is it clipped? So we turn on the waveform real quick. Right? Okay, what's happening over there? And you see that it is way above 1600 nits. 4,000 to 2,000. Right here, this entire segment is 2,000 to 4,000 nits, and it's a large enough window that it was unable to resolve that detail. Whereas here, although, I mean, I don't even know, I have to see if this is going to hit that same brightness, but see, so this is a case where, wow, I'm so impressed. And by the way, the QM8 did similarly, but it looked slightly different. So this is a scene where I'm going to put them side by side, where I can't even say, well, this is the creator's intent, because the reference monitor could not demonstrate the creator's intent. This is the limit of the 3110 that I talked about. It gets bright, but not bright enough. And right now my room is like a heater. There's 4 fans or 6 fans blowing out 3110. I have a fan behind it to exhaust. I don't want any of these TVs to be throttled by heat. I have like doors open throughout this room, and it's getting warm in here, and that's what you need to hit that brightness, and even then. And so look how close the Bravia 9 comes to 3110. Let me lower the exposure a bit more. I want to see if it's even close, because this is pretty cool.
One more unique feature on the Bravia 9 is that its capability for full field brightness is much greater than any other TV. So it's not just that its peak lumens measured at a 10% or a 2% window.
Correct.
It's so great, but it's amazing the detail and depth and contrast at full field high peak lumens. So even content that's graded at 1,000 nits, if the full field is very bright, a bright sunny day overlooking the ocean, every other TV can't do that. Even at 1,000 nits, they can't do it. But the Bravia
Well,
9 can
this
do detail.
and this is the detail. Well, so those bright points is where OLED, WNQD OLED is supposed to fall short. These are the scenes that I have to bring in the big guns. The G4 is how close can it get to this? Because the 3110 is clipping. As you can see, I've lowered the exposure even further and there's nothing there below the cloud. So I just like, wow, I love seeing this stuff. Hey, thank you for the super chat, Jermaine. Let me continue to play here. Hey, so Jermaine asks, when is the Sony A95 series scheduled to receive an update this year? So Jermaine, the A95L is carried over to the, is there a piece of dust on my camera? It's like, what is that? I'm sorry. I think there's a piece of dust on my camera. Like, what happened? I might have to brush it off real quick. Hopefully it's not on the sensor. If it is, we got problems. It just appeared. Oh, I think I wiped it off. Okay, so A95L carries over. Now, if it's a carryover, it means that, and this is something I don't know if Robert can confirm or not, but as it receives parts from Samsung Display, so 3rd gen panel is the latest QD OLED panel from Samsung this year. The A95L last year started with a 2nd gen panel. If they're still making A95L this year and there's no 2nd gen panels left to sell them, they're going to start receiving 3rd gen panels. They're probably going to incorporate that, but will it look different? Probably not, but I don't know if it will, because if it does, it's going to cause a ruckus. So I would assume that Sony will carefully ensure that all the A95Ls look the same, but that's an assumption on my part. Any update it receives this year should be identical to any updates all A95Ls receive in terms of features, function, but performance is another matter because anecdotally, some have said, oh, my new A95L looks brighter because I got a replacement. Could be a panel lottery. Maybe it is brighter because you won the panel lottery, right? But maybe it's subjective, maybe it's confirmation bias. No one is going to confirm whether or not it's a better TV this year than prior years, just because it doesn't make sense for Sony to do that. So I'll tell you this, Sony's position likely will be something along the lines of, it's great this year as it was last year. No change. We will update features and firmware for all TVs. Hopefully, Jeremy, that helps you. My recommendation is if you need to get an A95L, get it, because we don't know what kind of gen panel you'll get. The biggest improvement that's not software limited is actually its thermal efficiency. The 3rd gen panels are supposed to have better thermal efficiency, meaning it takes less energy to put out the same brightness and less heat. But that's not something you're going to really notice per se, but it could add to the longevity of the TV. So it's just something to keep in mind, but thank you for that question. Oh, look, we have a special guest chat. We'll get to Brian after Larry R. Replacing my Panasonic Plasma, will I be disappointed with the X90L? Do I need to stretch my budget to get the A80L? Yes, because Plasma is emissive. Even though it's only SDR, it is a self-emissive technology.
Yes.
You're not, I mean, that infinite contrast or near infinite contrast is only preserved on the A80L, and the A80L is slightly brighter. Don't get the X90L. You will be disappointed. Get the A80L. And what soundbar for my old ears? Get the A7000. I think it's good enough for your old ears, right?
Yes.
A7000 and are you still carrying the A7000, Robert?
Yes.
Okay. A7000, A80L, and are you still carrying the A80L, Robert? What kind of bundle deal can you give Larry? What can you offer Larry?
We have a very nice aggressive program on that.
Okay.
Let's take a quick look at that because we are doing something very nice on that.
Okay, Larry, hold on. Robert's going to do something special to you.
What size A80L?
Let's say 65-inch, because his Panasonic Plasma, I'm sure, is not over.
That's on sale for $19.99, and if you bundle it with the 7000 soundbar, which is $13.99 retail, we have a bundle promotion that brings it down to $8.99. So we give you $500 off.
And will he get the 5% store credit? Does that include the 5% store credit?
Um, call me and we'll do something special.
Oh, I just pushed Robert to the call me point. That's what I want to do, Larry. So valueelectronics.com. Reach out, say, hey, this is Larry. I asked you
Yeah,
about this, replacing plasma. There's only one of you. Definitely call Robert. And
right.
depending how far you're sitting away from the A80L, if you're sitting closer, you might even get the A3000, right? Or the A5000, right, Robert? Just one step down soundbar.
That's
So
right.
yes, that's something to consider. Or if you want surround, maybe the quad for your aging ears.
That'd be nice.
And Brian, hey,
Hey,
thank you for the super
Brian.
chat. Look at that. Suddenly he bought us coffee at Mwave. Hey, Brian, welcome. And love to see you. Brian, people have been asking about what TV to get, the Bravia 9 85-inch or the G4 83-inch. And when I hear movies and streaming, I'm like, well, you know what Brian said? He'd take the Bravia 9 if it's movies and streaming. But because he's a gamer, he's torn. So yes, we've been channeling your experience with both TVs. But let me ask you, Robert, you have both the 83-inch G4, right? These are your
Yes,
children. I know you can't choose your favorite child. You have the
yes,
83-inch G4 and you have the 85-inch Bravia 9.
yes.
For you, like what kind of content and which TV would you choose? Because they're very, well, I'd say the G4 is about $1,000 more right now, maybe a little bit more than that, right? But
Yeah, the
let's say price
G4 is
aside.
6,500
Uh-huh.
versus 4799.
Oh, I can't. It's hard to say forget price, but so as a value, Bravia 9, right? It's so much less
Absolutely.
expensive.
Bravia 9 on
But
that choice.
let's
Yeah.
say, price is not an object. They just want the best TV, right? They're like, look, saving money is not a big deal. I just want something that I could enjoy, and it's movies and streaming. Which would you choose, Robert?
Well, it depends upon your use case. Movies and streaming. By the way, all Netflix, Amazon Prime is all compressed to 10 to 15 megabits per second. Sony's new second generation XR processor with the XR Clear cleans that up. It looks like a 4K Blu ray disc. So that's Sony's advantage in processing. It's obviously also much brighter. But again, if you have a low ambient light room and your content is mostly Blu ray and gaming, then the G4 might be a better choice. So it really depends upon each use case and the application and the room that you're putting it in. So everybody should call me so I can advise you on what's
Oh
best for
yeah.
your
Or
application.
actually, I know your wife says stop calling Robert. He's got work to do because he spends way too much time on the phone with his clientele. I love it. Now, I want to hit Jimmy's comment. If you could calibrate the TCL QM8, you would save a lot or wait for the Hisense U9N. I'll tell you this, Jimmy, out of the box, don't even bother calibrating it for now. Unless you see, because it's panel lottery, right? You might not get the color accuracy that I got, but
Yeah.
you're going to enjoy it. And if you're like, oh, you know what, that magenta is a bit hard. Okay, give the calibrator a call because you know the content you normally watch, right? Or throw in the Spears and Munsell benchmark disc, look at the skin tones.
Yeah.
If it looks pretty good to you, give it a rest. Let watch it for a while. And because this year I've been very impressed with the amount of accuracy out of the box for most people. Now, if you are a true enthusiast, definitely you're guaranteed calibration is going to work. But the
Yes.
Hisense U9N, Robert, I'm hoping you carry this. It comes
Yes.
only in a 75 and 85 inch. I think,
Yes.
and I've been predicting this, the 85-inch U9N or the 75, either one, I think it's going to be the poor man's Bravia 9. Now, poor man, right? But a poorer man's Bravia 9. I'm so excited to see what that looks like. And I know it's going to be a limited release, just like last year's UX. So for
Yeah.
those who don't know, the Hisense UX last year has now been kind of broken up into this year, 110-inch is the UX, but the smaller sizes with the same processor, they're 9. So I think the image quality is going to be very similar because they will share the same Engine X processor, which is not shared, unfortunately, by the U8N. It's a step-down processor. I think the U8N, the U7N have the same processor. So if you're looking at U8N, you might want to look at U7N first, save some money, get the same processor. U8N has more dimming zones, but you may not need it. If you want
Mhm.
the better Hisense processor, wait for the U9N at 75 or 85 inches. And if you want 110-inch UX, before the end of the year. Some great conversations. Hey, Robert, how long do I have you for? I know we're kind of hitting
Yeah.
the, how far are we on? The 2 hour mark.
The absolute max would be about 20 to 25 minutes.
Perfect, perfect.
I have
So
another meeting. I have another meeting at 4:25.
gotcha. All right, all right. And officially authorized dealers are now selling it for $47.99. I think Best Buy just dropped it either yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
So hey, Robert will match it, and you're going to get that bundled deal. Give Robert a
Yes.
call for sure.
Everybody is 47.99 right now.
Everyone, yep. But only Robert gets that bundled, and I
Yes.
cannot recommend the quad enough, by the way. It's
Yeah.
the HTA9 I really liked, but the quad just takes it
I
up
know.
another notch with the dropout free multiple antenna. I mean, that was genius. And the app, I love the app. The app is very seamless. It works well. Just remember, your phone Wi-Fi has to be the same Wi-Fi that's on
Yes.
your controller, right? So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, like, wait, how come it's not connecting?
And FOMO, I don't know if you noticed it, but it comes with the tabletop pedestal stand, and you can use those tabletop pedestal stands as a wall mount for the speakers. So you can wall
Hmm.
mount the front or back
Yep.
and use pedestal stands for the front or back. It's really smart how they included all of that and designed it like that.
Yeah, I like it a lot. The HTA9 was like a cylinder, like a giant beer can, right? And it's, you could hang it on a wall, but it really stands out. It doesn't look good, right? This one, because it's flat, it will fit in more decor, I think. I mean, I already have in mind where to put it, because in my den upstairs where I have my ultra short throw projector, I'm done. Stick it against the wall, ultra short throw, boom, boom. I got a home theater. My wife is gonna love it. I mean, that's exactly what it is. I don't even have a screen, right? Boom, ultra short throw on a white wall, quad, and it's instant theater. Highly recommended for you guys, really, because most ultra short throw audio is like, this quad is on its
Yes.
own. It's so good. I mean, I can't wait to hear the Bar 9 again, but I have to tell you, at the Sony event where I heard it back to back, I was shocked because when I heard the quad, it had the 85-inch Bravia 9 or Bravia 7, right? Bravia 7, 85-inch, and the quad. I was like, oh, how much of this is the Bravia 7? I mean, I could listen to the quad alone. And then I heard it alone in my room with and
Yeah.
without the TV. And you guys saw the intro, and the quad sounded phenomenal. I'm like, okay, I'm sold. That's it, quad. This is right now the most flexible and awesome surround addition to any TV system. Like, it's great. Oh, Robert, you might have to go. Guess who's calling you? Larry is calling you right now, Robert. He doesn't want to miss that deal.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Larry.
Oh, Larry, you're awesome. And Larry, and don't forget, I'm sure Wendy will take care of you, but Robert will keep you
Yes.
on hold for just a little bit as we are on. See, Larry, you can't be calling. I'm talking to Robert. You're gonna have to pull Robert. Wait until the show ends. Tell Wendy, give her your number, and Robert will call you back. This is Jennifer's new 4,000 to 10,000 nit content. So don't be shocked if the 3110 clips and the Bravia 9 does not, because now we're going to 10,000 nit content, and my waveform will show that. Will it? Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, it did. Look at this craziness. I'm gonna have to pause on this.
Wow. Beautiful.
Oh, wow. And yep.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's 10,000 nits. The waveform says it's 10,000 nits. It must be true. Jen, you're killing me with your awesome content. So
That is
this is the
beautiful.
first 10,000 nit content on YouTube. I think it's safe to say, so I'm gonna have to pause on that because I just validated it on the waveform. You have to pause it right here. Oh, can you guys see it? I'm gonna make sure I expose it bright enough you guys can see the waveform. This is just so awesome. Okay. Right here, it says right here, 10,000 nits.
Beautiful.
These little lines, 10,000 nits, and the 3110, beyond its ability, but it looks good. And this is what we're talking about, pushing the envelope. All right, let me take take this down, back down. Yeah, it's so awesome. How
It is
bright that
beautiful
is.
to see that much peak lumens against a black background with little
I
to
know,
no
right?
or
Oh,
halo.
yeah, yeah. Well, actually, you know what? Thank you for that, Robert. Let's turn up the exposure so you guys can see how little blooming there is and
Yes.
compare the two, right? So there you go. That is how good it is now. In the past, it'd be like, because
Yeah.
it's so bright, a lot of this is less blooming, more exposure, because look at the monitor below, right? I mean, this is going to
And
be a
it's
great competition, Robert.
appears in
QM8 versus this TV. Wait, what
very
did you
nice.
say?
Is that how it appears in person?
Nope, I can't see because I overexposed it in person. You don't see that level, and that's what I'm
Right.
saying. I'm
So it's
emphasizing this is
not,
what I see in person, right? Let
not
me
as
expose it to what
the
I
bloom is
see.
not as severe as what you're seeing there. That's the camera overexposing it.
Yep, that's why we do
Okay.
overexposures.
Right. The blooming
This
is
is about
it's really a
oh,
non-issue on the Bravia 9.
and this is a test for all LCD TVs because I'm taking it down to where you don't notice the bright or the quote unquote blooming on the LCD below because it is not blooming. So as long as the LCD below looks like it's blooming, that means it's exposed too high. So there we go. I think that takes me to the right amount. Okay. See how clean the reference monitor is? That is your reference for blooming on this one. And look how
Yes.
close the Bravia 9 is. Now, we're going to have OLED next to it as well, so you can see what OLED does with this. But I have never seen the Sony look better on its mini LED. And to be fair, Robert, you remember how disappointed I was with the X95K. Because many people
Yeah.
are like, oh, I know, Sony and Pho-OLED, they love each other. I go, no, I was not happy with the X95K. Now, I got the 65-inch. It was their first quote-unquote backlight master drive release. I know the firmware fixed a lot of stuff, but when I got it the first month, I called Robert, Robert, I can't say it's that much better. And Robert's like, I know, my heart's broken. So this Bravia 9, I mean, it took 2 generations. They're there. This is what I wanted to see from the X95K backlight master drive. They should have saved the backlight master drive moniker for this year because it truly is unique.
Yes.
22-bit mini LED control per LED. Never been done before by any maker where each mini LED has a 22-bit light brightness controller. This is where you see that. I mean, look at the brightness of that red on its foot. That's just that foot. That's color saturation, Robert. At that brightness,
Isn't that nice?
phenomenal. Phenomenal. That is just, thank you, Jennifer, for making this happen. Because I can't say, oh, it's 10,000 nits. It's 10,000 nits, my friends. Look at that. So once I've taken that blooming down to what it should be on the reference, you see what a match the Bravia 9 is? Because my goal is to try to expose it so that you guys get this sense. Because if the bottom looks like it's blooming, then I've overexposed it beyond what you're going to see in real life. And so now I think the match is right there. And you see the waveform, how bright these images are, right? Whew, this is so good. I mean, look at that. Phenomenal. I cannot wait to put this against the G4. I normally don't do this because we know what happens when you put LCD against an OLED in these kind of scenes where it's super bright. And Spears and Munsell doesn't do it that bright because they limit it to certain scenes, but they will not hit 10,000 aggressively like this. So great. Sparky says, blooming doesn't exist. Hey, as far as for all practical purposes, my friend, I don't see it. Now, so I have to say black bars are slightly different beast. And I think that can be fixed in software. Whereas blooming, software, and dimming zone control, all of that, black bars, it's a fixed space. I don't understand why they cannot just shut down those everything below and above a certain space. Just shut it down, right? It's software control. So I think we're just, I don't know, a year or two away. I mean, all you software programmers, you know how it is, right? Why aren't you just shutting that off completely? But I think it's affecting nearby pixels or something. So I get it, but I'm sure they thought about that because it's so obvious. But at this point, though, I think we're there. I mean, look at the level of, look how well these TVs match. And and the reason why I overexpose, though, is to also compare contrast. When it's underexposed, contrasts look very similar between two TVs, even though they may be apart. When you overexpose it, then you see the shadow detail, and that's where your contrast differences are, right? In that shadow detail. So you guys are kind of seeing a little bit of both. And this, I'll tell you right now, the reference monitor is as close to infinite contrast as you're going to get without going OLED. And so if I oh, actually, this is overexposed. Goodness. All right. Now I'm exposing it right. Like, wow, you look really good. So now it's exposed even more correctly, right? But you see, this is the level of similarity the Bravia 9 has to the G4, or I'm to 3110. This, wow, this is really bright. Oh my goodness. So the reason why there's no color in the 3110 is, and there's a bit of color on the Bravia 9, is the window sizes are too big for the 3110 to handle that brightness. And that's why you see some blue on the Bravia 9 and not on the 3110, right? So if I take down the exposure another touch, you're going to see more of that color. This is just so awesome to see. Okay. Robert, look at the shadow detail on the Bravia 9. Do you know why it has a shadow detail? It's because it's tone mapping all that back in, whereas the 3110 is hard clipping it because it cannot produce that color at that brightness, because all those beams that you see, the poles, they're all at 4,000 nits. And so neither TV can handle 4,000 nits at that size window. So the 3110 has no tone mapping feature. It just hard clips. So you only see that bright white. It's hitting its limit. The B9, come on, this is not a grading monitor. So what it's doing is, okay, you know what? I'm going to take it down. But this is a great chance for me to change the settings to brightness preferred. So because you guys are asking, oh, what does brightness preferred do? It should make it even brighter, and you lose maybe a bit of color, but in return, maybe you get more brightness. So let's see. Oh, so off. Yeah, everything's gone. So gradation, brightness preferred. I don't see, oh, okay, I see it. It is so subtle. I keep it on gradation preferred. So I think Sony has made brightness preferred less aggressive. Right in this scene, it's not even doing nothing. So again, thank you, Jennifer, for making my 3110 look like a pedestrian monitor. Terrible. All right, let's see what we got here. Hey, Sean, I'm early enough for you to come on. Oh, and we have Samuel. I see you, Samuel. Samuel, we're coming to you next. But Sean has to go to bed. Hi, FOMO. Hello to Robert. The question is to Robert. So, for sports, what 85-inch TV will you choose? And Sean's been debating this, Robert. This is why it's so important. The QN900D, the Bravia 9. He has a bright room. Have you seen sports on both? Has the Samsung processor with that sports AI, motion AI, really the game changer we've been told? Robert, what are your thoughts? For sports now, bright room, 900D versus Bravia 9, 85-inch.
Yeah. I have both on display in my showroom. I'm going to put some, and I'll brighten up the room, and I'll put sports on both of them, and I'll put them next to each other. I know you're not nearby, but maybe we can do a FaceTime or something like that, where I can discuss it with you and show it to you what we're seeing at the same time. My educated guess tells me the Bravia 9 is going to be better. It will be brighter, and I love that new second generation of the XR processor, where they did upgrade motion as well, motion resolution. Right. So it's likely the Bravia 9. But let's look at both of them. That QN900D is a damn nice TV.
And Robert, just so you know, the content you should be looking at is cricket.
Okay.
And Sean, wait, I have to say this. Sean, I know you appreciate this. Team USA beat Pakistan in the world cricket in one of their playoff games. They beat Pakistan, which was a total upset, and I guess their top player, their pitcher, is a full-time developer at Oracle. And he's a part-time player, and he plays for the national team, and he went crazy. And so, because of Sean, I looked at the news and go, okay, I got to be caught up on USA cricket. So yes, this is something that like maybe next year I'll be testing cricket content. Thank you, Sean, for that suggestion.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
Sean, you're selecting the two best TVs for what your use case is. So it's like you
Can't
can't
wait.
make a
And Samuel, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your super chat. Hi, Robert. I live in Nigeria, and I
beautiful.
always shop on Amazon, then ship it down here. I got my 75-inch X95J and the 85-inch Q90A from Amazon. Tried to email you to get you, but you didn't reply. So,
What?
Samuel, email him again and see what your
Yes,
question is.
very
Great
good.
job, Fomo and Brian. Love your work. I'm targeting 85-inch B9 and 83-inch G4, plus the Q990D soundbar. By the way, my favorite all-in-one soundbar. It's like $1,300, $1,400. That is just a good value. Now, the quad immersiveness is slightly better, but the 990D comes with a subwoofer. For the
Right.
quad to have that level of bass, you're going to have to add the SW5, which is another, what, $600, right, Robert? SW5. So
Yeah.
that's something that I always keep in mind. That if you want everything all in one, I always recommend the 990D or the 990C. Okay, for this year's Black Friday, that's what Samuel wants to get. Can I call or email you now, Robert?
Yes, please do. And Samuel, even though if I cannot sell to you, I'm happy to support you and help you and answer any technical questions now and forever. So please email or call, whatever's easy for you.
Yes. Well,
Right now
Robert,
it's
you're becoming an I
fun,
was gonna
but
say, Robert, you're becoming an international dealer. I don't know if the Nigerian local distributor is gonna give you a call later
no,
today.
I want you to buy it locally. I want you to buy it in your country.
Right.
But
But
I'll
since
just
they're not answering his questions, he only has you, right? Hey, Sean, thank you for the follow-up. Hello to Robert. Question is to Robert. So, oh, wait, we just did that. Here we go. Follow-up, Samuel. There you go. Hi, FOMO. You've totally skipped both my super chats. Yes. And I got you now. I apologize. Thank you for your patience, my friend. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh, where is it? It's like, I apologize if I missed a lot of people's super chats. And here's one. A thank you from Offman, and thank you to you. 3110 appreciation, FOMO. And the 3110 appreciates you, my friends. Okay. All right, I think we have another 10 minutes with Robert, and we're going to wrap up. Jesse, thank you for that correction. I feel like such a child. Cricket uses bowlers, not pitchers. See, I'm learning everything every day. And I take it Jesse is a cricket watcher. Bowler. I never would have thought to call it a bowler. I see an arm going. Oh, it's a pitcher. Bowler. Thank you. Is it underhanded then? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the nuances of cricket, but I will be better this time next year than I am today.
yes.
And okay, great question, Fraser. Thank you. Just 100 nits between Dolby Vision Dark and HDR10. Not bad. Dolby Vision Dark still shifting white point. Oh, Fraser, depends on the TV. LG, G4, Sony, A95L, A95K, Bravia 9. The only person that can answer this honestly would be a calibrator who's measuring these things with their meter, with the Dolby Vision content, what it's supposed to be. Then he measures the entire grayscale from top to bottom, whether it's Classy or Dwayne. And it's not something I do. What I do is I call them, hey guys, what's the deal with Dolby Vision this year? And whatever they say, I just parrot the answer. And at the end of the day, visually, I don't notice a big difference. I notice differences, but they're not more pleasant. They're not necessarily accurate to source per se. They're different. And especially when it changes from TV to TV, I always say, if you want accurate to source, just get the LG, G4,
Mhm.
C4, any generation, you're safe. Because it is hard getting Dolby Vision right, for whatever reason, right? I don't even pretend to know why. We just know they're not always the same. But you bring up a very good point, Fraser.
But this is really the system that you wanted.
All right.
Or you could check it here.
And So, Robert, the shootout this year, when will you be making the announcement? What can what can you share with us right now that
Okay.
you'd like to share, or you
Well,
can share?
we have the dates set for August 3rd and 4th, Saturday and Sunday, and we're going to separate it into two separate events for the first time this year. We'll
Okay.
have OLED emissive displays, and we'll have transmissive mini LEDs, two separate events, totally separate. And we'll crown two kings of TV, mini LED and OLED, and then we'll put the two kings up against each other at the end. And we're flying in all the famous Hollywood filmmakers that we use every year, along with some very exceptional video scientists. And this is a big year. This is a big year.
I am
So
looking forward to it.
yeah, and we'll have two BVM 3110s, those professional monitors that you now have.
And
Okay.
I missed Seek's super chat. Thank you, CK. I call you
Yeah.
Seek because this is what I see. All right, we are getting your super chat. See, you all have to say, "Hey, you missed my super chat," and then hopefully I catch it, or one of our friends will catch it. Hey, you missed Seek's super chat. Okay. Picked up a cheap S90C 65-inch with second gen panel whilst I wait for the Bravia 10. Oh, right, looking to 2025. A fantastic upgrade over my old burned out 55-inch LG B6. What a great value TV. Absolutely, because you got two things going for you. One, it's larger, right, 55 to 65. Two, it's a QD OLED upgrade from the B6, which is way brighter with way better shadow detail, no black
Yes.
crushing, because the older OLEDs from all of them before 2017, 2019 had black crushing, near black issues. I mean, the technology wasn't there yet. I'm so glad you got the S90C QD OLED. The question is the Bravia 10. Are you hoping it's a QD OLED? So we're going to have a lot of speculation at the end of this year about that. Thank you for your patience, CK.
Right. Okay.
And Sean wants to let you know, Robert, I wish Value Electronics was in more places like India. So we got Nigeria, India, you're opening chains everywhere. You're going to be a global dealer one day because the Q900D is out of stock and the Bravia 9 is coming in October. Yeah, I'm going to have to call that distributor in India. Robert, will Sony become more proactive in releasing sets in other places as early as in the USA or no change? Yeah, what insight can you share? Because I know you fly to Japan. Do you have these conversations with the Sony executives, like Sony home headquarters, about releasing these TVs in other parts earlier?
So each country operates by themselves independently. So it's really a question for Sony India to answer that. They can get them at the same time if they want to do that. It's not up to Sony headquarters. It's up to each
Mm,
individual country. Now, as you know, I push very aggressively for us to get these TVs ASAP. And we've been very successful persuading Sony to bring them into the US.
yes. And Getty, I saw your super chat and I did miss it. It looked like the earlier one. I apologize. I second the Ottoman 31110 is a beast. I second that Ottoman. 31110 is a beast. So Ottoman said earlier that the 3110 is a beast. And just to reemphasize why it is a beast and why people love it, now for the first time as a reviewer, right? I know other reviewers have had access to the reference monitors, but I can safely say this content intended this because even if the TV cannot show it, guess what? That waveform shows it. And so I can say in the waveform, well, the max brightness in this scene right here is 1000, 2000, 3000, and then we could see which TVs make that look best, even though it's beyond the capability of the TV, because right now no TV can really do it accurately at certain brightnesses, but we can at least grade their tone mapping. And then you could decide, hey, I like the way this TV tone maps or that TV tone maps. But yes, I'm so excited to use that 3110 on more content and so forth for you guys for sure.
And also just remember that the 3110 and the Bravia 7 and the Bravia 9 share the same second generation that just came out of the backlight master drive that again controls the luminance level of each and every tiny little mini LED, not just the large local dimming zone like all other LCDs do, and also controls the quantum dot color rendering.
I'm
And
losing my
that's
touch, Robert.
time
I
content.
missed another super chat. Like, what? Mark J, I see you. All right. Hey, I apologize and thank you for reminding me. Thank you for that super chat, Mark, and thank you for your patience. What will Sony do next year with the B9 successor? Okay, I love speculating. Slight upgrade or again 3 times more dimming zones. So I have to be honest with you. The way I've seen Sony do this, when they release a major upgrade like this, they tend to let it run maybe for 18 months, 24
Yeah.
months, just like the A95L, right? The A95L ran for 2 years last year and carries over this year. I honestly expect the Bravia 9 will continue to run exactly as it is this year. Maybe a few discounts, but as far as the specs and all the good stuff, that will remain unchanged. However, what you're going to see though is a completely new TV that they didn't address this year, right? Guess what? The A95L, doesn't that need to be a flagship update next year? So possibly you're not going to get a B9 successor beyond maybe XR clear upgrades or just future upgrades, very minor. The A95L though, that will have a successor next year. That will get the 4th-gen QD OLED from
Yes.
Samsung Display. And what can that do? And I'm very excited because we've seen Samsung Display upgrade the QD OLED every year. Last year, it hit arguably, measurably, 3,000 nits as a raw panel. This next year, I know Samsung Display is working on 4,000 nits on their QD OLED. How close they get is another question. But with Sony promoting 4,000 nits, with Samsung Display working hard to hit that, together, I think next year's A95L successor is going to be record-setting, record-breaking in terms of performance and brightness, so it could match the Bravia 9 where it can't. And that's going to be pretty exciting to me. Robert, you have any speculation about next year's Bravia 9 successor or A95L successor?
Well, again, please remember that Sony is the only company that controls each and every tiny little mini LED, not just the large local dimming area. So they're already treating it more like an immersive display,
Mm-hmm.
where they're controlling the luminance levels, which is a big upgrade this year, of each and every, not just on and off, but the luminance level of every tiny little mini LED. And also, they have the contrast enhancer this year on the 2nd generation of the XR processor. That also is enhancing the contrast. I don't know. When I remember when I'm on the Sony dealer council where we advise them on enhancements and next model generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to one of my meetings with all the engineers. I said, we're going to carry over the A95L. There's no successor. They said, you're on the council. Tell me, would you like us to do better? I had nothing to say.
You're on the council.
Yeah.
Oh, if I was on the council, they'd kick me out. All right. Hey, Getty, I missed your super chat. Thank you for your patience and letting me know. When are we going to see the first Pho-OLED TV? Not for a while, my friend. So Pho-OLED, he's referring to phosphorescent blue. So we already have phosphorescent red and green, right? That's been
That's
done.
right.
That's looking great on the WOLED. Phosphorescent blue, however, is going to benefit not just WOLED, but benefit Samsung's own QD OLED. The problem is phosphorescent blue right now as a raw material is still unstable. They're working on the lifetime. It doesn't look like it's going to be released in time for the TV makers. And the first iteration won't even be TVs. They're going to test it on smaller devices like smartphones because it's easier, less costly, right? Because it's going to be expensive. And so it'll be cheaper to kind of amortize it with smaller devices. And people are willing to pay, what, $1,200 for the latest and greatest. They can do that on a small phone and people won't blink an eye paying that. But on a larger TV, how much is that going to cost? And the lifetime on a smartphone, given people buy a new phone every 2 or 3 years, that might be okay for them. So my prediction now is phosphorescent OLED on a TV is probably at least 3 years away, possibly longer. Yes, Robert.
And sorry to have to leave the meeting, but I have
Oh,
another
yes.
thought.
No, go. You got to talk to Larry. I think he's waiting for
I
you.
love you so much. Thank you, FOMO. You
Thank
are
you,
the best.
Robert, for coming by. And don't forget, guys, bundle deals. He will match anyone and the quad. Make sure you bundle the quad because you're not going to get a discount on the quad until Black Friday. Thank you,
Thank
Robert.
you. All the best.
See you later, buddy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Super chat, Getty, G-Man, full lead. 3 years at earliest, I suspect closer to 5, honestly. And only because I'm looking at where they are now. I mean, it's not even available for smartphones. So smartphone, maybe next year, unlikely now, maybe the year after. So 2026 on smartphones, 2027 fine tuning, and then if we're lucky, 2028 maybe. Now Samsung has its own Pho-OLED project, so we'll see where that is in a few years as well. But yes, and thank you again for another super chat, Sean. You're staying up today. Thank you, my friend. Robert, hope the LCD shootout will be in a bright room. Bravia 9 looks great, but unfortunately Sony India targets festivals, and India's main is in October called Diwali. That makes sense. So this is a late release. I hope that changes. And Sean, also, each regional director, right, sales director for that region, they tell Sony what they think and when they think it should be released. So Sony headquarters defers to your local distributor, vice president, rep. The Sony rep for Asia/India subcontinent, they're going to decide, hey, what and when's releasing in South Asia. Now, as far as the LCD shootout, we're going to have two types, right? We're going to have darkroom, critical shootout for filmmaker mode, right? Creator's intent. And we're going to have a bright room comparison on 85-inch TVs. So we're going to have, I know for sure, the 85-inch Bravia 9, hopefully the Hisense U9N, and 900D is a possibility as well. I think we'll have that. And the 83-inch G4 in a bright room, where it's less about accuracy. I mean, they'll be calibrated, but it's more about how does this look in a bright room? Because in a bright room, you can no longer say it's accurate, right? Everything has to be brightened up. The gamma's going to be slightly lowered, right, to give you that extra boost of brightness. Maybe contrast enhancers on. Everything's going to be slightly brighter, not accurate, but how does it look in a bright room? So we're going to have that comparison demo that people can decide for themselves. I like this, I like that. I don't think there should be a winner for that because it's very preference because there's no objective standard to say, hey, this looks closest to a reference monitor. In a bright room, that's not how reference monitors work. Okay. And, sorry, Sean, Robert's left, but I'll answer your question. So, if Robert stays in India and Bravia 9 is coming late, will he be happy with the Q900D if sports and movies are the criteria? Because I'm planning to do the same. The 900D is a good TV, but I think for the price, it does not justify its premium over the Bravia 9. So, the movies on the Bravia 9, untouchable right now. I can tell you that right now. Sports motion, I'm really going to have to test it because I don't dare say conclusively, oh, for sure, Bravia 9 is better in sports motion. I mean, we can extrapolate based on Sony's record, but I'm going to let you know as soon as I get that test video out for you guys. And CK, thank you for the super chat. With the power of the Apple TV processor, why don't they make built-in TV processing obsolete? AI upscaling, motion processing, tech limitation. See, this is such a good question. I'll tell you why right now. So you have the Apple TV processor, okay. And it's not even about processing power. It's about the software developer, the designer, the objective measures. Sony has a certain approach, and their approach is, okay, we've produced these films. We need the TV to look as much like that film as possible. This is our technology stack. We've got QD OLED, we've got mini LED, we've got LCD. We need to take all of this. We need to match this technology with our image processor to make it look identical to what we see on the reference monitor. So they have an objective in mind. Make their TVs that they've designed match the source content that they're very familiar with, because Sony Studios has grading suites. They rent out to other people, they use for themselves, Columbia, MGM, right? Apple has the technology. If they were to go in that direction, I know Apple TV has their own studio, but you see where we're going here. They essentially become a third-party contractor for all TV makers, which is possible. So basically, they'd be like, Samsung, call us, we'll develop this for you, but you have to share with us your entire hardware stack. So they would literally be paid to do what Samsung is doing in-house. That's not affordable because every TV is different, right? Whether it's a Q900D, QN900D, or the Q90C, they have such disparate technologies. You have ADS Pro panel, you have VA panel, you have this 8K panel, right? and at different sizes it's slightly different. They expect Apple to do all of that management to match with the source content. Apple could do it. You know, they'll hire the people, they'll hire the experts, right? We know what they've done with what do they have? Pixar, right? At one point. So, but the issue really is, do you want Apple? I mean, are you willing to pay for Apple to do that? Because it cannot be an external box. Now, to the degree that MadVR works, MadVR is $14,000. So I'm not saying that this would cost $14,000, but already Apple TV is not inexpensive. You add that layer and the technology doesn't change. What changes is the amount of manpower. And then every year you have these TV upgrades that Apple has to be on top of and charge the TV makers. So all of that is possible, Seek, but I know for a fact that TV dropping in price. So you have this amazing thing from Apple that Apple's working well with TV makers for maybe 4 times the cost of what you're paying now. Or you have a TCL, forget Apple, that's too expensive, we'll do our thing. TCL will then destroy the market at that point, or Hisense, right? And so in concept, it's great, but I think in all practical purposes for pricing, not gonna work. But it's a great question though. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking of that, because that's quite the geeky thing to think about. Nosh Handy asks, thank you for the super chat. I've enjoyed my 75-inch Z9D or ZD9 since it launched. Never had the itch to upgrade until now. I think this is a great time to upgrade now. Until the B9. SDR brightness is still very important and often overlooked. So SDR brightness, if it's accurate, you don't need to go over 200 nits, right? Technically, SDR is 100 nits. And you know, some content maybe 200 nits now, but somewhere between 100 and 200 nits, that is SDR. All these TVs do that right, accurately. That's how it's been graded. If you get any brighter than 200 nits, what you're doing is you're adjusting to your room brightness. It's no longer accurate. You have to adjust the gammas. Suddenly everything is boosted up, right? You have to adjust the contrast to make up for the ambient lighting differences. It is now a different TV. All these TVs will do that well, from OLED to the Bravia 9. SDR is the easiest thing to manage when it comes to getting a TV that looks good in SDR. So you don't have to go to the Bravia 9. As a matter of fact, Bravia 7, X93L, they will all do SDR phenomenally well. You don't have to worry about black bars because you're supposed to see lifted stuff, right? Because this is SDR. So I think you're in a good place. You could upgrade to the Bravia 9, and then HDR will look great as well as SDR. But that could be overkill if you only watch SDR content. So let me know if that's the answer you expected. I don't know if that was what you expected. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes, my friend. I think we're pretty close to the end. And hey, FOMO, the BVM3110, is that hitting 4,000 nits? Oh, it's hitting 4,000 nits, but on a 10% window. Remember, it is limited to a certain window size. It's not 4,000 nits full field, definitely not. Full field is 1,000 nits. But as the window, 10% window, gets larger or smaller, that 4,000 nits starts to shrink. And a 50% window size, it's no more than 1,500, 1,600 nits, period. So the answer is absolutely not. That BVM3110 cannot hit 4,000 nits at a 50% window. And as a matter of fact, no TV can right now. Nothing. There's nothing out there that will hit 4,000 nits on a 50% window. And that's why we have all these improvements. Now the question is, do you want content that hits 4,000 nits at a 50% window? Not because your eyes can't handle it, right? Let's put that aside for now. It's because the regulators will have none of it. How much power must it take? I mean, I got like a fan blowing over here, right? Your TV at an 85, 65, 75-inch size, 50% window, 4,000 nits, you're going to be burning circuits, my friend. And so I don't think that's ever going to happen because of the thermal limits on all TVs right now. But good question. And it's, yeah, nope. 4,000 nits, 10% window, and then it goes down from there. And Sean, thank you for the follow-up. Continuing on to CK's question. FOMO, if someone owns a Shield TV or Apple TV, does it reduce the gap between Flagship TV as they're so good? In the past, possibly. But now, I think it's safe to say that we'll take the TCL QM7, right? This year's model. We'll take the Hisense U7N and U8N, this year's model. So these TVs, mid-tier, solid budget, right? Last year's Sony X90L. Their image processing is better than either Apple TV or Shield. Shield and Apple TV were released, as far as image processing was concerned, how many years ago, right? They were better than maybe a 2017 TV. We are now, fast forward many years later, they have not necessarily updated that image processing specific to your TV, because that's the second thing is they have a generic processing, right? They might convert maybe 24p to 30 to 60, address the jitter issue, but that's already been solved. All these TVs do that very well now. So what happens is Apple TV, they can make a native 60 frame rate. Like they'll send you what looks like a native feed, so it doesn't stutter, but all it's doing is converting 24 to 60. Your TV can do that already, not a big deal. And as a matter of fact, the GeForce motion settings, the Sony X90L and above, Samsung, all those motion processors, easily better than Apple or Shield. They were not designed to take a TCL 3 series and make it into a Sony XR Clear. They're just trying to get a cheap-ass TV to look no worse than an S5 TCL, right? It's a very low bar. I mean, look at the price of these things. How much development time did they put into it? They're not changing this every year. These TV makers, I mean, I'm seeing TCL do it right now. They're improving the processing literally every year. That's a lot of money that neither Shield nor Apple is willing to put into it. It's just too much work. So the answer is no. Moving forward, don't even think of either the Shield or the Apple as a better solution to your own TV's native processor. Right, and I think we're going to wrap up shortly, but thank you so much, guys. Hey, Getty, thank you, FOMO, for the live stream. More to come, I hope. Yes, this is kind of like, this is the one that you guys have been waiting for. It's a bit of Bravia 9, a bit of the Quad, and it's a bit of the 3110 all together. You're seeing the possibilities. You're seeing how good the Bravia 9 is compared to the 3110. You're seeing the limits of the 3110. You're seeing my favorite content for this, which is Jennifer Gala's content. Check out her channel. I'll link it in the video description below. That's the HDR Super Channel. Yes, this is it. Thank you so much for that super chat, Getty. You're awesome. And I know you're enjoying the heck out of your 100-inch U8K. Okay. This is one of the downsides of watching. Here we go. Vizio to that list as well. You guys are so great. All right. We'll catch a few final questions, and then we're going to end it for today. I think we've gone long enough. I hope this scratches your itch before Black Friday. Hey, FOMO, so which TV is brighter, the TCL or the Bravia 9? I know, you don't want to hear this. I got this TV, unpacked it late last week, like Thursday, Friday, and I've only had enough time to just enjoy the movies, right, with the 3110. The TCL literally is right behind this TV. The minute I end this stream, you guys know what I'm doing next. I'm going to put the Bravia 9 right next to the QM851G, and I'm going to start watching it with the 3110. And then once I have an idea of what both TVs can do, fire up the G4, and we're going to have a fun time. Next week, I'm hoping to get that video out next week before M-Wave. But yeah, I think this is a great way to end it because this is what you all are asking. How close is the QM851G to the Bravia 9? No holds barred, man. We'll see the strengths and weaknesses of both TVs because those of you getting the QM851G, I want you to know the value you're getting because I would love for you to upgrade your TV, even if you can't afford the Bravia 9. I think the QM851G, but even without this comparison, I can sense, because I've seen it against the 3110, the Bravia 9 is up against a real challenger. And to be fair to the QM851G, I'm going to reiterate that in some of my earlier videos, I noted that, oh, it looks, the color is a little bit desaturated. That's because dynamic tone mapping was on because I was making it a bright room TV. For this comparison, we're going to make it a dark room, accurate to the source. In this case, it's Jennifer Gala. So the QM851G may not be as bright as it could be, but color is important. So I'm going to take it down without dynamic tone mapping to maximize its color saturation, which it does very well, by the way, without dynamic tone mapping. And we'll see the best from the QM8 against the best from the Bravia 9. And then in a bright room setting, dynamic tone mapping on here, right, to get the extra brightness. Okay, well, what can I do with the Bravia 9 to do the same? Hitting the extra brightness and maybe losing a bit of color saturation. So we have apples to apples. So I'm so excited, guys. And, oh, Sean, snuck one in. Okay, we have One final super chat from Sean before I go. All right. Have prices reduced for the high-end TVs because the 900D in India is costing, for example, $5 and 900C on launch was $8. Okay, so 5 to 8, yes. So we're talking the 900C launched at 8 and now the 900D launches at 5. Maybe Samsung in my region has become realistic. It appears they're more aggressive and they're more realistic. And the good news is the 900C to 900D, all they did was upgrade the processor. They didn't do much, I believe, with the actual panel technology, with the actual dimming zone algorithm. They probably fine-tuned the software. That's cheap, right? Or cheaper to do. But when you build an all-new system, that's expensive at launch, and then it amortizes over the course of the lifetime, and suddenly it's a little bit less expensive. And I think the 900D is benefiting from that cost reduction over time, and now they're just focusing on the software. I mean, if they can stretch this technology another year, it would be cheaper still. The problem is, and this brings up a more nuanced answer, which is, if you guys want upgrades every year, it doesn't give the TV model a chance to bring the prices down. So if you let the TV model mature, meaning same technology, but they improve it over 3 years, by the third year, it'll be at its best, at a cheaper price than at launch, but the technology hasn't changed much. And we saw that with the X95K to the X95L, which is now the Bravia 7, right? K, 95L, and 7, Bravia 7, essentially the same model technology. Look how inexpensive the Bravia 7 will be by Black Friday, and you'll know what I'm talking about. I like that. Now, for enthusiasts, I'm willing to pay a little extra, right? The reality is most people see the bottom line, and so we have to appreciate that's what is needed. I'm just waiting to time this skip ad for us to do what we need to do. So, good question, but I'm all for that. And Jay says, thanks, bye FOMO. And hey, thank you guys. Good night and goodbye, and thank you for joining me. Until next time, my friends, stop the FOMO.